Chapter 329. In an instant, the entire path fell deathly silent. Zhang Lin turned around and stared at the young man behind him in shock. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Bai Siling were stunned as well. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were just trying to provoke Wang Chong, so as to vent their frustrations. Yet who could have thought that Wang Chong would actually agree to it? Because they were too surprised, the three of them were stunned, and none of them could say anything. "Lad, what did you just say?" Su Gan suddenly urged his steed forward, and stared at Wang Chong in bewilderment. Even now, he wasn't sure whether he had really heard those words or not. "I said, all right, I can lead my men to suppress the bandits." With a slight smile, Wang Chong glanced at the trio calmly without the slightest hint of stage fright. But Zhang Lin opened his mouth, wanting to stop the other party, but he found himself unable to say a word. "Ha ha, good. Lad, you sure have guts." After receiving the confirmation from Wang Chong, Su Gan burst into laughter from sheer rage. "Fine. You are formidable. You are stronger than us. We will await your good news." As he spoke, his eyes were filled with hatred. One could imagine the rage in his heart. "Lord, this isn't a good time to make a move." A 10-man squad leader rode up from behind and said worriedly. Even though Su Gan had failed thrice, there was one thing he was right about. An operation carried out at night would definitely have a higher chance of success than one carried out in the day. "There's no need to say any more. Let's go." Wang Chong raised his right hand and gestured for them to leave. The mouths of the two 10-man commanders behind him opened and closed, but they still respectfully followed Wang Chong out of the tent. "Lord, the sun is already up. How can I succeed? Lord, there's no need for you to agree to their terms." At this moment, another 10-man squad leader rode up from behind and said worriedly. Failure was a small matter. Given their strength, the bandits posed no threat to them at all. However, he had already made his statement. If he were to return like this, he would probably be ridiculed by others. It would have been fine if he hadn't known of Wang Chong's identity. After all, this was just a conflict between Wang Chong and Su Gan and the other trainees. However, after learning of Wang Chong's identity and the fact that he came from a military family, as well as the grandson of Duke Jiao and the youngest son of General Wang Yan, everyone's impression of him had changed. Emotionally, no one wanted to see Wang Chong being humiliated, because that would be the same as insulting everyone else. "Haha, don't worry. If you're only worried about daybreak, it's not that complicated." Wang Chong stopped next to a tree, his expression indifferent. He was not as nervous or worried as the others, and he was even able to smile. The sun has just risen. Think about it. If we all think that we have a chance of success during the day, what will those bandits think? The two 10-man squad leaders were taken aback. They glanced at one another, and their eyes suddenly lit up. As soon as Wang Chong said those words, they vaguely understood what he was thinking. Bandits are bandits, after all. Once the sun rises, we in the army will all take up our positions and be extremely vigilant. But let me ask you, do you think that the bandits are that well-mannered? Do you think they won't wash up, cook, eat, or rest? Do you think they'll just scatter and go to different mountains? Ma Song, you've participated in a few encirclement missions. Do you think that the bandits are that well-mannered? Wang Chong said as he glanced at 10-man Ma Song. No, the bandits aren't that well-mannered. Ma Song's eyes grew brighter and brighter. He had already caught up to Wang Chong's train of thought, and he knew what the latter was thinking. Ma Song was astonished. As expected of Duke Jiao's grandson, the young master of a military family, even his train of thought was different from ordinary people. Indeed, the bandits were well disciplined. If even the imperial army felt that the operation was unlikely to succeed, then the bandits would probably be even more relaxed and think that they wouldn't be attacked. From this point of view, the success rate of the operation at this time was probably higher than that at night. Ma Song finally understood why Wang Chong would agree to encircle the bandits even though it was already morning. Looking at this young man who looked to be at most 15 or 16 years old, Ma Song couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. "Haha, it seems that you have understood." Wang Chong stared at Ma Song and laughed. This 10-man squad leader was very quick-witted. Perhaps after this operation, He could make use of his relationship with the King of Song to transfer him to his side through the Ministry of War. A mere 10-man squad leader shouldn't be too much of a problem. Moreover, with the intelligence that he had displayed, Wang Chong could think of ways to groom him after he returned. His future achievements would definitely not be as simple as a 10-man squad leader. But of course, these were all matters for the future. There was no need for Wang Chong to tell Ma Song about it now. As these thoughts flashed across Wang Chong's mind, he quickly regained his composure. Alright, let's begin. Tear off a few pieces of cloth and wrap the hooves of the horses. Make sure not to make any noise. Yes, Lord. A moment later, after the preparations were completed, Wang Chong waved his hand grandly, and 4 echelons of cavalrymen swiftly darted into the forest. Wang Chong left quickly, but he returned even faster. Around an hour later, Wang Chong and his 20 horsemen emerged from the forest, once more appearing before the crowd without a speck of dust. It's over. Su Gan charged over with a doubtful look on his face. It's over. Wang Chong nodded with a smile. You succeeded. Huang Yongtu also charged over with a doubtful look on his face. It's a success. Wang Chong nodded once more. How is that possible? Who are you trying to fool? An hour's time is at most a round trip from here to that stronghold. You said that you succeeded? Do you really think we're fools? Su Gan flew into a rage. He had carried out the mission 3 times in a row, and each time, he had taken close to 2 hours. Yet, Wang Chong claimed that he had succeeded in less than an hour. And it was in broad daylight on top of that? How was that possible? Did he take them for fools? Empty words and white teeth, pure nonsense. Hee. I have already said that the mission is complete. There's nothing I can do if you don't believe me. Wang Chong sneered. Lad, you aren't spouting nonsense. This mission was arranged by the Bureau of Military Personnel. You should know the consequences of lying about your contributions. Huang Yongtu retorted with a stern expression. Clearly he didn't believe Wang Chong's words either. Wang Chong chuckled, not bothering to respond to him. Soldiers Zhang Jia and Zhang Yi stepped forward. Did you really manage to eliminate the bandits? Lieutenant Zhang Lin suddenly galloped over and asked sternly. He had no idea what the truth was. But since a dispute had arisen, as an official lieutenant, he had the responsibility to get to the bottom of it. Reporting to Lord Lieutenant, we have indeed eliminated the bandits in the mountain, and none of them escaped. Behind Wang Chong, 2 of the horsemen whose names had been called stepped forward and bowed as they sincerely spoke. This time, Zhang Lin didn't have any objections. Unlike Wang Chong, Su Gan, and Huang Yongtu, the soldiers on the mission had to return to the training camp after the mission was over. However, these soldiers were soldiers on duty. Soldiers had to obey orders. If they were to lie about the military, even if it was something as simple and insignificant as this, they would be severely punished by the Bureau of Military Personnel. Furthermore, as veterans of countless wars, soldiers had their own pride. They wouldn't lie, and it was beneath them to do so. Since they said that Wang Chong had completed the mission, it was definitely true. Li Quan and Song Zhu, head out to take a look. I want to know if all of the bandits have been eliminated, Su Gan suddenly said. He didn't trust Wang Chong that easily. Yes, Lord. The 2 cavalrymen swiftly left. An hour later, they returned once more, and the news they brought back left Su Gan stunned. All of the bandits in the den had been killed. Most of them were still asleep, and some of them were killed while they were cooking. Pots, bowls, pots, and ladles were scattered all over the place, and not a single one of them managed to escape. Wang Chong had really wiped out a bunch of bandits. Facing this result, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were stunned. Regardless of whether they believed it or not, Wang Chong had really wiped out a bunch of bandits. Out of the 4 of them, only Wang Chong had succeeded in 6 missions. Perhaps it's just my luck. The bandits I met were all exceptionally weak. Wang Chong brushed aside the hair at his temples and met the strange gazes of the crowd. Hearing Wang Chong's words, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu didn't say anything. On the other hand, Bai Siling couldn't help but glance deeply at Wang Chong. Brat, count yourself lucky. Let's see if you'll be so lucky the next time. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu glared at Wang Chong hatefully. Even if they were beaten to death, they wouldn't believe that they would lose to a person from the Kunwa training camp. Not to mention that he was even younger than them. Wang Chong's explanation gave them some consolation. Indeed, compared to Wang Chong's strength, they were more willing to believe that Wang Chong was just lucky. This operation didn't improve the relationship between Wang Chong, Su Gan, and Huang Yongtu. Instead, it made the two of them dislike this commoner from the Kunwa training camp even more. For the rest of the journey, the two of them became increasingly estranged from Wang Chong. They basically had nothing to say to each other. The troops of both sides were also very far apart, and there was a clear sense of coldness and hostility. Time passed slowly, and before they knew it, the day had passed, and it was night time again. "Kid, you go." Su Gan suddenly came to look for Wang Chong, and for once, he didn't volunteer himself to deal with the bandits. Su Gan wasn't a fool either. In the short span of a day, the news of the official army encircling the bandits had already spread far and wide. If he went now, the success rate would definitely not be high. Under such circumstances, Su Gan didn't believe that Wang Chong would be as lucky as he was during the day. "That's right. We were the first ones last night. Now it's your turn." Huang Yongtu also chimed in, using a small trick to change the topic. Chapter 330. Alright. Wang Chong had been resting under an ancient bronze tree, but when he heard these words, he patted off the dust on his body and readily accepted the advice. Without another word, he mounted his horse and beckoned his 20 subordinates to gallop up the mountain without the slightest hesitation. In just a moment, Wang Chong and the 20 cavalrymen had already disappeared without a trace. Even Su Gan and the others were taken aback by Zhang Xian's swift response. They were caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. They thought that Wang Chong would at least hesitate for a moment. But who could have thought that he would leave just like that? Wang Chong left swiftly, and he returned even quicker. Just like before, in less than an hour, Wang Chong returned with 20 cavalrymen. Furthermore, it didn't seem like he had just gone through a huge battle. Instead, it seemed like he had just taken a leisurely stroll around the mountain peak, before returning leisurely. "You succeeded?" Zhang Lin rode forward on his steed, and stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. No matter how he looked at it, Wang Chong didn't seem like someone who had failed the mission. But wasn't this a little too fast? Not to mention, there wasn't the slightest sound coming from the mountain. Wang Chong nodded with a smile. "Is it luck again?" Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's faces darkened. There were simply too many uncertainties in the matter regarding Wang Chong. Who knows? Perhaps it was really just luck. Who asked the bandits I met to be so weak? Wang Chong chuckled. "Humph." Su Gan and Huang Yongtu harumphed furiously. The duo was perplexed. Logically speaking, news of the arrival of the army should have spread far and wide within a day. No matter how weak the opponent Wang Chong met was, he shouldn't have been so careless. At the very least, they should have been more difficult to deal with than the ones in the day, right? Yet, Wang Chong's trip to and fro took roughly the same amount of time as the day, and there was no movement at all. Could it be that the opponents he met were really weak? Did he eliminate them before they could even send out a signal? Let's go and give it a try. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu glanced at one another, and the same thought surfaced in their minds. It was impossible for all the bandits on the road to the west to be of equal strength. Perhaps the bandits in this section were especially weak. If even Wang Chong could annihilate them effortlessly, then they would definitely be able to do so with their strength. The two of them hurried forward, one in front and one behind. An hour later, Su Gan led the way into the depths of the forest, killing his way into the depths of the forest. When Su Gan left, he was brimming with ambition and determination. But when he returned, he was completely dejected and lifeless. Behind him, the top of the mountain was ablaze with flames, which could be seen from dozens of miles away. Not only was the other party prepared for this operation, they even managed to catch Su Gan off guard. Of Su Gan's subordinates, 2 steeds and 4 cavalrymen were injured, and even Su Gan himself was injured. It would have been one thing if he had been injured in a face-to-face battle. But if it wasn't a trap, it had to be some kind of poison mist or poison arrows. None of these were honorable means, If not for Su Gan's decisive decision to forcefully break through the encirclement and kill the bandit leader, the losses this operation would have been even greater. Su Gan was filled with rage, but he had nowhere to vent it. They were both carrying out a mission to eliminate bandits, but the difficulty of the mission was on a completely different level from that of Wang Chong. Recalling how relaxed Wang Chong was when he descended the mountain, as if he had just gone on a hunt, Su Gan felt even more awful. That fellow can't be that unlucky, right? Huang Yongtu's eyes darted around in astonishment. There was no way he would believe that Su Gan would be weaker than Wang Chong. In Huang Yongtu's view, there was a high chance that Su Gan was unlucky this time around. Naturally, Huang Yongtu wouldn't step on Su Gan's bad luck. I'll give it a try. Huang Yongtu rolled his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he led his team forward. He refused to believe that he would be as unlucky as Su Gan. No matter what, bandits were still bandits. There was no way they could match up to the official army. Huang Yongtu left swiftly, and he returned even more swiftly. His hair was disheveled, and his face was dirty. His luck was even worse than Su Gan's. The flames that Su Gan had caused in the mountain had long caught the attention of the bandits. As such, the other party had made ample preparations, using all kinds of traps, ambushing arrows, poison mist, and even attracting the attention of bandits from other mountains. It had been an arduous battle, and nearly all of Su Gan's subordinates had sustained injuries. Even Huang Yongtu had nearly been struck by a poisonous saber. If not for one of the cavalryman's quick reflexes, using his own body to block the blade for him, Huang Yongtu would have been poisoned and injured. Hurry up and help me. Carrying the unconscious cavalryman who had blocked the saber for him, Huang Yongtu bellowed in exasperation. Naturally, there were military physicians in the 80-men group. Fortunately, they were mountain bandits after all, so the poisons they used were very common and not too rare. It didn't take long for the cavalryman's condition to stabilize. But at this moment, the atmosphere in the 80-men group had turned a little bizarre. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Bai Siling turned their gazes to Wang Chong at the other end of the path. It was one thing for Su Gan to be unlucky, but it was the same for Huang Yongtu as well. Were the two of them unlucky at the same time? Was Wang Chong the only lucky one? It was one thing for the opponents he met in the day to be weak, but at night as well. Could it be that all the good things had gone to him? So far, Wang Chong was the only one who had completed the mission of the three of them, and he had done it with ease at that. It was impossible for them to believe that there was nothing amiss here. Let's give it another try. I don't believe that he will still be so lucky on the third day. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu looked at the smiling Wang Chong beneath the camphor tree on the other side of the path, and the same thought surfaced in their minds. The pride of the two of them made it impossible for them to accept the fact that they were no match for a commoner from the Kunwa training camp. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's expectations didn't come true. On the third day, there was still no change in the situation. Not only did Su Gan and Huang Yongtu fail, their condition was even worse than the first day. Even Su Gan had sustained some injuries from the clash. On the journey west, the further they were from the capital, the stronger the bandits and highwaymen would be. Lieutenant Zhang Lin had already warned them about this. But on the other hand, Wang Chong seemed to be hunting leisurely, as if he was drinking water. There was no sign of injury on him at all. In fact, it was hard to tell if he had really climbed up the mountain to eliminate the bandits. Something's wrong. For the next 3 days, Wang Chong managed to suppress Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, who had been drifting apart from each other, finally reunited once more. There's something fishy about that lad. Indeed, it's impossible for his luck to be that good. How can the bandits he meets be so weak? That lad is trying to trick us, Huang Yongtu said. There was a tinge of anger in his voice. Every time Wang Chong returned, he would use the same excuse. The bandits I met are probably weaker than the others. Initially, the duo thought that it was true, but thinking about it now, it was clear that the lad was mocking them. Just the thought of it was infuriating. If Wang Chong's Shenwei or Longwei had appeared, the duo would have to admit that they were no match for him. But Wang Chong hadn't even finished forming his true martial realm war halo. How could the duo possibly be willing to face a commoner who was weaker than them. We'll send a few men to follow him later on. Let's see what's going on. Su Gan spat furiously. He had never been looked down upon in such a manner before. Just the thought of it was infuriating. Huang Yongtu nodded. He was also curious to know how Wang Chong managed to wipe out the bandits. It was so fast and easy, and it didn't even cause the slightest commotion. The duo discussed under the tree, and it didn't take long for them to come up with an idea. Wang Chong, it's your turn now. After the duo finished their discussion, Huang Yongtu suddenly leaped onto his steed and rode up to Wang Chong with a livid face. Oh! Wang Chong's eyebrows shot up. He didn't seem to recall that it was him, but since Huang Yongtu wanted him to set off first, he didn't mind either. All right, beckoning to the back, Wang Chong led his troops up the mountain just like before. Not too long after Wang Chong left, Su Gan gestured to a cavalryman, and a cavalryman immediately dashed off in the direction Wang Chong and the others had left in. Pung! Without any sound, a bandit with a black scarf over his face, hiding in the depths of the treetops, who looked extremely vigilant, had his neck cut off by a sharp dagger that stuck out from behind him. The corpse fell to the ground with a dull thud, reminiscent of a heavy object crashing into the ground. However, amidst the rustling of the rustling leaves in the forest, it wasn't particularly conspicuous. As the corpse of the bandit fell to the ground, similar thuds echoed from other parts of the forest. Lord, it seems like someone is following us. At this moment, Ma Song suddenly spoke up. His gaze subtly shot a glance behind him, and his expression was extremely wary. Oh, are you sure if it's in front or behind us? Wang Chong's brow rose as he calmly said, behind us, about 50 steps away from us behind a bush. Ma Song replied seriously, oh, let him be then. There's no need to pay him any heed. Wang Chong waved his hands nonchalantly. But Lord, relax, Ma Song. If I'm not mistaken, it should be a spy sent by Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. If it's really a bandit, do you think that he would still be so indifferent to us? Wang Chong faintly smiled, appearing extremely relaxed. So Lord already knows about it. Ma Song was taken aback. Wang Chong chuckled softly, not bothering to explain. After being humiliated by him for 3 consecutive days, it would be weird if Su Gan and Huang Yongtu remained indifferent. Chapter 331. Get ready. We'll split into 4 groups and take care of the bandits and scouts along the way. The treetops, the bushes, the rocks, and the hills. Remember, don't let them send out any signals. As long as a single one of them escapes, our operation will fail. There's no need for us to continue with the assault. Let's retreat and leave them to the other soldiers to deal with. Wang Chong turned around and continued commanding the operation. Yes, Lord. Ma Song quickly left to carry out the orders. Hearing the dull thuds from the forest, a smile slowly crept onto Wang Chong's lips. It was just that the bandits were weak, they weren't fools. To be able to survive the encirclement of the Imperial Army, they either possessed superior strength or exceptional alertness. No matter how strong they were no match for the Imperial Army. Thus, it was easy to imagine how alert the bandits were. Snakes had their ways, and rats had theirs. After all, scions like Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were too inexperienced, and they had underestimated the difficulty of the mission. They thought that they would just have to dispatch their troops and defeat the bandits with overwhelming strength. But from the very start, Wang Chong knew that this mission was a test of experience, insight, and wisdom, not just pure martial prowess. The bandits on the mountain had their own scouts. No matter how deep the night was, or how sleepy the bandits were, there would always be a few of them standing guard. If one didn't eliminate these scouts, it would be impossible for one to eliminate all of the bandits. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu should have thought of this when they failed the first time. However, it was a pity that they were too inexperienced, and they had underestimated the bandits. Even until now, they still hadn't thought of the fact that there were scouts among the bandits, thinking that it was just their bad luck. Prepare yourselves, begin. After swiftly dealing with the scouts, Wang Chong waved his hand, and under the cover of the night, the 4 echelons split into 8 groups and charged into the den. At this moment, the bandits on the mountain peak were still sleeping soundly. What? Scouts. On the path at the foot of the mountain, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu stared at one another in bewilderment. From the beginning to the end, the two of them had never taken these bandits seriously. After failing for several days straight, Zhang Xian had thought that it was due to his bad luck. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that he would be noticed by the scouts the bandits had arranged. So that's how it is. It's been so many days, but this kid actually didn't mention it. Huang Yongtu was infuriated when he thought of this. If that kid had told them a little, they wouldn't have been unable to complete the mission until now, and they even almost got poisoned by him. However, Huang Yongtu also knew that given their attitude over the past few days, it was impossible for Wang Chong to tell him about it. Humph, so that's how it is. On the other hand, Su Gan didn't think too much about it. Knowing Wang Chong's secret, he flung his sleeves and stood up. I was wondering how capable that kid was. Now that we know what's going on, we won't need him anymore. As he spoke, he regained his confidence. At the same time, the disdain and contempt he had for Wang Chong surfaced in his eyes once more. It was just a moment of carelessness that he failed to notice the scouts among the bandits. Since he knew what was going on, he would surely do better than Wang Chong in the future. This commoner of the Kunwa training camp no longer had the slightest bit of pride to speak of before him. Di-da-da. While Zhang Xian was still deep in thought, the clopping of hooves sounded from the forest. Dressed in a casual outfit, Wang Chong led the group out of the forest with a smile on his face. Mission accomplished? Su Gan asked from afar. Wang Chong nodded. Congratulations, Su Gan replied coldly. Even a fool could hear the disdain in Su Gan's voice. Wang Chong chuckled, glancing at a certain cavalryman behind Su Gan. He already knew what was going on. But Wang Chong didn't expose him, only indifferently replying with 2 words. Thank you. Lad, don't get too complacent. Do you think that we don't know what you're up to? Huang Yongtu, let's go. It's our turn now. The two of them galloped forward, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. They had left in high spirits, but when they returned, their faces were still covered in dust. In fact, their complexions were even more awful than the previous few times they failed. What happened? Didn't you notice how he eliminated the traps? Su Gan found the cavalryman tailing Wang Chong. His face and neck were flushed red. In this operation, he had learned from Wang Chong's mistake and eliminated the bandits' scouts and sentries beforehand. However, an ordinary twig trap had rendered all of Su Gan's efforts futile. Not only so, as they advanced westward, Su Gan noticed that the bandits had set up more and more powerful traps, making it nigh impossible to guard against them. Only at this moment did Su Gan realize that the only way to sneak into the stronghold without alerting the bandits was to eliminate the scouts. On top of that, he had to find a way to eliminate the numerous traps. I don't know either. I was tailing them, but I realized that they didn't fall for any of the traps. That was a moment of carelessness. The cavalryman tailing Wang Chong was also sweating profusely. It was the duty of a soldier to follow orders. Su Gan had instructed him to follow Wang Chong, and he had done so. How could he have expected so much? Su Gan's request had already exceeded the scope of his responsibility. Damn it! Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's complexions darkened. We have underestimated that lad. That lad held back. Hatred flashed across the duo's faces. Su Gan had suffered a setback, and so had Huang Yongtu. Even though the two of them appeared to be amicable on the surface, one stemmed from the might of a dragon, while the other stemmed from the might of a god. Huang Yongtu thought that it was a coincidence that Su Gan had failed, but it turned out that he had failed as well. In this silent contest, the two of them were the losers, and the winner was none other than the person whom they didn't think highly of, Wang Chong. Hee, the two of you are back. May I know if the bandits have been eradicated? On the main road, upon seeing the duo, Wang Chong immediately stepped forward and clasped his fist to welcome them. Even though the duo had always been arrogant, recalling the disdain they had for Wang Chong before leaving, they couldn't help but feel embarrassed by Wang Chong's words. Their faces reddened, and they felt as though they were about to find a hole to crawl into. If they had succeeded, the two of them would have been able to look down on Wang Chong and harshly mock him. But now the tables had turned. Don't get gleeful. Didn't you just eradicate a few groups of bandits? What's there to be proud of? Huang Yongtu scoffed coldly. Even though he felt his face reddening, it was more anger than anything else. If not for the fact that Lieutenant Zhang Lin was supervising them, he would have long made a move. Humph. Compared to Huang Yongtu, Su Gan's reaction was much simpler. With a cold harumph, he led his subordinates to the other side. Why don't you tell them directly? A voice suddenly sounded by Wang Chong's ear. Bai Xiling had unknowingly arrived at his side. What? Wang Chong shot a doubtful look at her. They think that you are a commoner from the Kunwa training camp. Why don't you tell them your identity? Bai Xiling assessed Wang Chong from head to toe with a probing look in her eyes. The sense of familiarity she felt from Wang Chong was growing stronger and stronger. She was certain that she had met Wang Chong somewhere in the past, or perhaps it was something similar. Furthermore, his way of doing things had also piqued Bai Xiling's interest. What identity could I possibly have? Wang Chong feigned ignorance. No commoner would dare speak to scions of prestigious clans like Su Gan and Huang Yongtu in such a tone. Bai Xiling shook her head as she stared intently at Wang Chong, seemingly trying to peer into the depths of his soul. Your background is definitely not that of a commoner. I have no idea what you are talking about. Wang Chong chuckled as he urged his steed forward. This lady from the Bai clan was much smarter than Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. If he were to continue chatting with her, Wang Chong was afraid that he might give himself away. Looking at Wang Chong's back, Bai Xiling sighed deeply. She had a feeling that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had kicked a metal plate this time. That person was clearly displeased with them. He was currently toying with them. However, as long as he refused to reveal his identity, there was nothing Bai Xiling could do. After failing twice in a row, the two of them immediately lost the chance to try again. No matter how many bandits they killed, it was meaningless if they couldn't complete the mission. Soon after a brief discussion, they turned their attention back to Wang Chong. Lad, get up. It's your turn now. While Wang Chong was resting against a pine tree by the side of the road, Huang Yongtu suddenly walked up to him, blocking the moonlight that shone through the forest. What's wrong with me? Wang Chong opened his bleary eyes. It's time for you to exterminate the bandits. Huang Yongtu cursed. I'm not going. Wang Chong took out a handful of beans from the pouch at his waist and stuffed them into little Wu's mouth, who had stuck its head out and was licking him with its tongue. What did you say? Huang Yongtu's mouth twisted in anger. Wasn't this lad thinking too highly of himself? If I recall correctly, I have already been there today, right? Wang Chong replied calmly. The rules have changed. From now on, each of us can go there twice. Huang Yongtu replied without any hesitation. He and Su Gan had already considered this matter. I'm not going. Wang Chong rejected him once more. You dare? Huang Yongtu flew into a rage. Whether Wang Chong would go or not was secondary. What was more important was his infuriating attitude. This is the unanimous decision that we have come to after much consideration. You have to go regardless of whether you want to or not. Otherwise, don't blame me for getting nasty. Huang Yongtu had been suppressing these words for a long time now, and he finally made use of this opportunity to speak them out. He had long wanted to teach this lad a lesson. Those who came from the Kunwa training camp were way too arrogant. They might not be a match for this lad in exterminating bandits, but in terms of individual cultivation, they were far superior to Wang Chong. This was their forte. Chapter 332. If I recall correctly, it was already the 4th day since the first day. I have already wiped out 4 groups of bandits, and not a single one of them managed to escape. Going by the orders we have received, I should have already completed the first phase of the mission. In other words, unless I receive a new order, I can choose whether to set off now or not. Wang Chong raised his middle finger as he spoke calmly. Those bastards, they don't understand the meaning of this middle finger anyway. As if he had punched empty air, Huang Yongtu's face froze, and he suddenly found himself unable to speak. Thinking about it, Wang Chong had succeeded every single time from the 1st to the 4th day. In other words, he had indeed completed all of the requirements of the first phase of the mission. All of the excuses that Huang Yongtu had prepared beforehand were rendered completely useless. Damn it! Huang Yongtu clenched his fists tightly as he cursed Wang Chong. If there's nothing else, I'll have to trouble you to leave for the moment. I still have some matters to attend to, so I need to rest for a while. Wang Chong leaned back as he waved his hands as if he was shooing away a fly. Huang Yongtu was filled with rage, but there was nowhere he could vent it on. Thus, he could only turn around and return to his original spot. Sugan opened his mouth, but he eventually closed it once more. There was nothing he could do at this point. In the remaining time, Huang Yongtu, Sugan, and Bai Siling were still struggling with how they should complete the mission. As for Wang Chong, he was much more relaxed than before. If he was in a good mood, he would clear out the bandits along the way. And if he was in a bad mood, he would rest for the day. As for the second phase of the mission, Wang Chong was more than happy to be idle. Lord, their men are here again. In the forest, Ma Song suddenly exclaimed. As he spoke, he glanced behind him. Amidst the darkness, one could vaguely see that there was more than a single person. On the first day, Sugan and Huang Yongtu had dispatched men to tail Wang Chong, so they had only sent a single person out of fear. But towards the end, there were more and more of them, and they became more and more unscrupulous. Just like now, there were a few people who knew that they had been discovered, so they simply walked out from behind the rocks and openly watched from the back. This woman. Wang Chong shook his head with a bitter smile. Sugan and Huang Yongtu still cared a little about their reputation, so the only one who could send someone to keep an eye on them so openly was Bai Siling. Unlike Sugan, Huang Yongtu and the others, this woman wasn't as arrogant and condescending as them. Moreover, this woman was much more astute. He might be able to fool Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and the others, but he couldn't fool her. Plus, she was a woman, so Wang Chong didn't want to argue with her. Let him be. As long as they don't cause trouble, just ignore them, Wang Chong said faintly. While removing the traps, he continued to move forward. Behind him, the cavalrymen obediently followed behind Wang Chong, following the path that he had taken. For bandits who made a living by robbing, setting up traps, and whatnot was nothing out of the ordinary for them. Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and the others had been injured many times, and they had fallen for these traps by accident. Bandits in the pugilistic world always had their own means that the students and science in the training camp were unaware of. However, these means were completely useless before Wang Chong. Back then, when the otherworldly conquerors invaded, in order to balance out the disparity in strength, the army that Wang Chong led back then had used all kinds of traps. Compared to those complicated traps, the means of the bandits this time around were nothing more than child's play. There were many traps that Wang Chong could bypass even with his eyes closed. It was only when he encountered those that were difficult to bypass that Wang Chong would occasionally step in to remove them. As for his subordinates, Wang Chong's instructions had always been simple. They only had to follow his instructions. If Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and the others thought that they would be able to learn it easily just by sending a few cavalrymen to keep an eye on them, they would be thinking too much. Some things weren't that easy to learn. Lord, the den of the Blackwind bandits is right ahead. If I'm not mistaken, the gold should be in their den. Ma Song pointed to the peak of the mountain, after finally passing through the area of traps. Under the faint moonlight, one could vaguely make out a towering camp, standing on the peak of the mountain. At this moment, the entire camp was still in a deep slumber. No one knew that the army led by Wang Chong had already arrived here. There's no need to stand on ceremony then. All of the gold will be ours now. Looking at the peak of the mountain, Wang Chong's lips slowly curled into a smile. He had already completed the first part of the mission, and it wasn't that he had nothing better to do, or that he wanted to show off before Sugan, Huang Yongtu, and the others. There was still quite a bit of profit to be made from this westbound Silk Road. Back when they were exterminating the bandits, Wang Chong had already asked around. Most of the bandits on the road leading to the capital were from the underworld, and they had nothing to offer. However, the Blackwind bandits were different. They had just robbed a group of merchants, and they had obtained quite a bit of gold, jewelry, and accessories. The bandits had their own channels to dispose of the stolen goods, and they had sold all of the jewelry and accessories for gold. In other words, the Blackwind bandits were a huge gold mine. How could Wang Chong possibly let go of such an opportunity? Right now he needed money everywhere. Da-da-da. When Wang Chong appeared with 20 cavalrymen and chests of gold, everyone's eyes widened in shock. Wang Chong's chests weren't covered with lids, and they were a glistening yellow, dazzling in the moonlight. Gold. Gold. There was probably at least 100,000 gold taels in there. No one could have thought that Wang Chong would be able to bring back so much gold from his trip to the mountain. In that instant, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's eyes reddened. Even though the Su clan and Huang clan weren't small clans, the fact that they were able to enter Longwei and Xinwei training camps was more than enough to prove their worth. However, their clan's wealth was completely different from their own. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had exterminated bandits many times, and while some bandits were still able to escape, they did manage to wipe them out. However, the two of them had gone in and out so many times and destroyed many mountains. Yet they hadn't obtained even a single hair. How could the duo not feel jealous that Wang Chong was able to bring back 100,000 gold taels from his trip to the mountain? Lad, where did you get the gold from? Huang Yongtu urged his steed forward as he tried his best to restrain himself. However, his jealousy still leaked out uncontrollably. Wasn't this lad's luck a little too good? Of course it's from the bandits. Wang Chong smiled calmly. He already knew what Huang Yongtu was up to. Since it's from the bandits, it should be considered as the spoils of war during the mission. According to the rules, it should be confiscated or split equally among the four of us. As Huang Yongtu spoke, he stared intently at the boxes of gold. His intentions were clear. You worked so hard, waking up early in the morning to earn nothing, only to meet an unkempt beggar by the side of the road, who casually picked up a box and became a billionaire. How would you feel? That was exactly what Huang Yongtu was feeling at the moment. Either Wang Chong agreed to it, and the four of them would split it among themselves, or else he would confiscate it and leave it to none of them. The royal court's order only states that we are to exterminate bandits, but it doesn't state how we should deal with the spoils of war. In other words, since it's not stated, you can deal with it however you want. Commandant Zhang, am I right? Wang Chong chuckled as he turned to Lieutenant Zhang Lin. Yes, that's right. Zhang Lin hesitated for a moment before nodding his head. Wang Chong's harvest had truly exceeded his expectations. However, the royal court didn't state how they should deal with the spoils of war. And on this point, Wang Chong was right. Haha, the royal court didn't state it. Since that's the case, we can deal with it however we want. Huang Yongtu, I'm sorry, but I have to trouble you to move aside. You're blocking my path. Wang Chong waved his hands and laughed heartily. Bastard. Huang Yongtu clenched his fists tightly in anger. Wasn't Zhang Lin's personality a little too straightforward? He thought that Zhang Lin would cooperate with him. Who knew that he would answer whatever that lad asked? How infuriating. Don't worry. Since that lad was able to steal gold from the bandits' den, we can do the same as well. That lad did remind me of something. Perhaps, we might be able to reap some unexpected rewards from this mission. By the time Huang Yongtu returned, Su Gan was surprisingly calm, without the slightest hint of anger. Along the way, all he had been thinking about was how to deal with the bandits and complete the mission. He didn't think about the matter of the loot from the bandits at all. In the previous few missions, he didn't even bother to search through the bandits. But at this moment, Su Gan realized that he had overlooked a crucial point. These bandits made a living by raiding and robbing, and they had been living here for a long period of time. Naturally, they had accumulated quite a bit of wealth. If they could earn 100,000 gold taels in a single mission, how much would they earn in a single mission? A few 100,000 gold taels, or even 1,000,000 gold taels. Even for the Su clan, this was a huge sum of money. Su Gan was tempted. He had to admit that the lad from the Kunwa training camp had given him quite a bit of inspiration. Huang Yongtu, don't mention the matter of handing over the spoils of war anymore. This matter is beneficial to that lad, and it's beneficial to us as well. Let's just make it clear to all of us. Su Gan said. This, I understand. A contemplative look appeared in Huang Yongtu's eyes. He wasn't a fool, so why wouldn't he do something that was beneficial to him? Bai Siling, what do you think? Su Gan turned his gaze to Bai Siling, who was standing not too far away. He wasn't a fool either. For some reason, Bai Xiling had been getting close to that lad several times recently. Chapter 333. Ah! Bai Xiling was taken aback. She didn't expect Su Gan to mention her name. But soon, a smile crept onto her face. A beautiful lady's smile carried a charm that no ordinary person possessed. Don't worry, I won't spoil your plans. That's good. Su Gan nodded and fell silent. Dreams were one thing, but reality was another. Even though they had dispatched quite a few cavalrymen to observe Wang Chong while he was carrying out his mission, both Su Gan and Huang Yongtu still fell for their traps time and time again. No matter how many times they observed it, it seemed as if they would never learn it. The traps of these bandits were endless, and there would always be some unexpected one that would pop out. Yet, it seemed as if Wang Chong would never encounter such a trap. That feeling left the duo frenzied. How could a prestigious clan possibly impart such a third-rate secret art to them? As scions of prestigious clans, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had never come into contact with such a thing before. Only the scions of commoners and hunters would have such a deep understanding of such traps. The familiarity that Wang Chong displayed made them even more certain that Wang Chong was a commoner, and their dislike for him deepened. However, that wasn't the crux of the matter. More importantly, despite conquering 6 bandit camps, they didn't find anything at all. Their greatest harvest was 80 tails of white. This was even more infuriating than having nothing at all. Furthermore, what left the duo even more embarrassed was that Wang Chong had conquered 2 more strongholds during this period of time, obtaining a total of more than 300,000 gold taels. How could the duo face such humiliation? Even Su Gan, who was calm at the start, fell silent before Wang Chong. Every time the operation ended and the group gathered together, the two of them would feel Wang Chong's mocking gaze on them, even though Wang Chong didn't even spare them a glance. It's not that I'm lecturing you, but if you still look down on him and despise him, thinking that he is some commoner in the Kunwa training camp, there will be a lot more such embarrassing and intolerable scenes in the future. A cold and haughty female voice suddenly rang in their ears. They didn't need to turn around to know that it must be Bai Xiling from the Bai family. Now, only she could speak in such an arrogant voice beside the two of them. Bai Xiling, if you like that kid so much, why don't you go and hang out with him? Why are you still following us? Huang Yongtu mocked coldly. This woman's words were too harsh. He didn't like it. If it weren't for the fact that the Bai family was powerful in the capital, and that this woman wasn't a good person, he would have been impolite to her long ago. Huang Yongtu, you really don't know how to behave. I kindly reminded you, but you treated it as malicious intent. No wonder you can't win against your second brother, and are suppressed by him in the family. Bai Xiling gently stroked the hair beside her ear and retorted rudely. You! Huang Yongtu's eyes narrowed in rage. This woman was too insensible. The competition for the throne was extremely intense, and that matter had always been a taboo for him. Yet she actually dared to expose it in front of everyone. Enough! Just as Huang Yongtu was about to explode, Su Gan, who was seated cross-legged on the ground, suddenly called out. Huang Yongtu, you can't be thinking of lowering yourself to the level of a woman, right? Huang Yongtu's face froze. He could ignore Bai Xiling, but he couldn't ignore Su Gan's words. Bai Xiling, it can't be that you came here just to humiliate us? Speak, what are you trying to say? Seated on the floor, Su Gan said impassively. Su Gan, at least you're smart. I didn't intend to say it, but in view of your words, I'll give you a reminder for free. After fighting with him for so many days, haven't you noticed what kind of steed he is riding? Bai Xiling glanced in Wang Chong's direction and said coldly, Steed. Hearing those words, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu immediately turned their gazes in Wang Chong's direction. Under the gentle moonlight, Wang Chong's steed was grazing on the grass near a lush locust tree. Under the bright moonlight, the steed's coat was exceptionally glossy, giving it the air of a majestic steed. Good steed. This was the first time Su Gan was looking at Wang Chong's steed. This was also the first time he realized that Wang Chong's steed was exceptionally good-looking. But that was all. Su Gan couldn't tell what Bai Xiling was trying to show him. By Siling, what do you mean by that? If you have anything to say, just spit it out. What's the point of hiding things? While Su Gan was only thinking about it, Huang Yongtu's words were far from polite. They sure are blind. I've already explained it to you. But they still don't understand what's going on. Serves them right to be toyed with. Take a closer look at the surroundings of the steed's hooves. Is there anything different about them? Bai Siling said coldly. Upon hearing Bai Siling's words, the duo's gazes immediately shifted downward. With a single glance, they finally understood what Bai Siling was trying to get them to pay attention to. Under the moonlight, the four hooves of the steed were as white as snow, untainted by even the slightest speck of dust. At a glance, it looked as if it was floating in midair, creating a mystical sight. This is... A thought suddenly struck Su Gan's mind, and shock surfaced in his eyes for the first time. On the other hand, Huang Yongtu's complexion was the same as well. It seems like those two fellows aren't too stupid after all. Taking in the expressions of the duo, Bai Siling heaved a long sigh of relief. As scions of prestigious clans, their eyes weren't too shabby. The white-hoofed shadow is a majestic steed of the royal palace, a prized imperial steed of the royal family. It's difficult for even officials to be rewarded with it. That fellow has been riding it for several days now. And yet, you two fools still thought that he was an ordinary scion. Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock? Bai Siling didn't let go of this opportunity to ridicule the duo. Wang Chong couldn't have imagined that the reason why Bai Siling viewed him in such a favorable light wasn't due to her intuition. Rather, it was because she had recognized the white-hoofed shadow beneath Wang Chong on the first day. This woman was far more intelligent than Wang Chong had imagined, and her thoughts were also much more meticulous. In truth, Bai Siling could have warned them long ago, but there was no way Bai Siling would admit to it. How is that possible? The white-hoofed shadow is an imperial steed of the royal palace, and even the influential officials of the royal court find it hard to obtain one. How could they possibly reward it to a brat of dubious origins? Bai Siling, don't spout nonsense. It's just a horse with white hooves. What nonsense are you spouting? You've gone crazy thinking about men. The last sentence was spoken by Huang Yongtu. Idiot! Huang Yongtu's last sentence caused Bai Siling's brows to furrow, and her heart to burn with rage. She had warned them out of goodwill, but they had completely taken her for granted. Bai Siling was about to explode, but she quickly calmed down. Huang Yongtu, don't bite the hand that feeds you. You don't know how to appreciate kindness. This is all I can do to help you. Believe it or not, I'm not the one who's going to lose face. With that, Bai Siling coldly snorted and tugged on the reins. She walked away, leaving a cold and elegant back view to the duo. This woman! Huang Yongtu was also furious. Bai Siling's personality was truly unlikable. However, Huang Yongtu couldn't do anything to her. The women of the Bai clan weren't easy to deal with. Bai Siling soon left. But after Bai Siling's departure, the duo calmed down. Even Huang Yongtu, who had mocked her a moment ago, fell silent. The duo wasn't fools. If Wang Chong succeeded once or twice, it could still be attributed to coincidence. But if he succeeded 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, or even 6 times, it was no longer a coincidence. Throughout their journey west, Wang Chong didn't fail once. On the other hand, the duo didn't succeed even once. With their backgrounds, this was completely abnormal. Not only so, thinking back, Wang Chong's colt was also abnormal. Even though it had yet to reach adulthood, its leg strength, speed, and the intelligence it displayed were not inferior to any divine steed. In fact, it might even be superior. It was impossible for an ordinary warhorse or foal to have such a performance. Brother Su, do you think that what Bai Siling said is true? Huang Yongtu hesitated for a long moment before breaking the silence. Seated on the ground, Su Gan didn't say a word. But most of the time, silence was an answer. The relationship between Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Wang Chong didn't improve. But Bai Siling's words weren't completely ineffective. At the very least, when Su Gan and Huang Yongtu met Wang Chong, they were no longer as arrogant and superior as before. Instead, they were avoiding Wang Chong, and there was a hint of bewilderment in the depths of their eyes. At the same time, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu also let go of their pride. After failing for a few more days, the two of them finally learned to work together. They combined their forces and went up the mountain to encircle the bandits. Even though it would still alarm the bandits on the mountain, with the two of them working together, they had a high chance of success. At the very least, they weren't constantly failing like before. Looks like you've done well. Wang Chong retracted his gaze from the duo beneath the tree, turned around, and looked at the white-robed lady beside him with a smile. This lady had truly refreshed his understanding of the world. He had no idea what she said, but Su Gan and Huang Yongtu actually agreed to work together. That was truly astounding. No matter how well I've done, I can't compare to you, Bai Xiling said calmly, glancing at the huge chests carried by Wang Chong's subordinates. She estimated that there were at least 600,000 to 700,000 gold taels in there. This was almost more than the annual earnings of those influential aristocratic families in the capital. As expected, robbing was much more profitable than doing proper business. More importantly, there were 20 true martial realm experts provided by the royal court for free. The royal court had always been strict with the experts of the prestigious clans. Even for a prestigious clan, 20 true martial realm experts was a huge burden. Chapter 334. I say first, miss, what kind of magic did you cast on them? Can you tell me? Wang Chong suddenly teased. The woman at his side had skin of ice and bones of jade, a curvaceous figure, and an elegant and refined appearance. Coupled with her cold and intelligent demeanor, even Wang Chong had to admit that she was a very attractive beauty, a beauty as exquisite as a snowy mountain or a white lotus. Magic! A hint of surprise and confusion flashed across Bai Xiling's eyes. Then, as if she had understood something, she smiled. If I tell you, will you let me join you and share your gold? Bai Xiling raised a finger and pointed at the chests of gold in Wang Chong's hands as she said with a smile. Sometimes, she really couldn't understand what this fellow was thinking. Several 100,000 gold taels was not a small sum. According to the rules, he could have swallowed it all. But he was actually willing to share it with the cavalry under his command. If this person wasn't a fool, then he had extremely high standards and was indifferent to money. But regardless of which it was, it made Bai Xiling even more interested in this youth, who was even younger than her. Hehe, a young miss of the Bai clan would be interested in a mere several 100,000 gold taels? Wang Chong looked at Bai Xiling with a faint smile. You knew my identity long ago. Bai Xiling's smile was crafty, as if she had known. You've already told me your name, so there are probably very few people who don't know. Wang Chong didn't deny it. There's more than one Bai clan in the capital, right? There's probably only one Bai clan that can enter the Longwei training camp, right? Hehe. As expected of someone who can ride the white-hoofed shadow bestowed by the royal family. Nothing can be hidden from you. The last sentence caused the entire conversation to come to an abrupt end. Bai Xiling had used the most unexpected method, catching Wang Chong off guard, to defeat Wang Chong. The name White-Hoofed Shadow was enough to explain many problems. Although he did not expect his identity to be able to be hidden forever. However, the intelligence of the woman beside him was much greater than he had imagined. As expected of the Bai family in the capital, they are indeed related by blood. Wang Chong thought of the Bai family's reputation in the outside world, and his heart was filled with emotion. That family had always been known for their shrewdness. In the past, Wang Chong did not have much of a concept. But now, Wang Chong had a real taste of it. Why aren't you talking? Bai Xiling was all smiles. Looking at the young man's stiff face, she suddenly felt a little proud. This guy always seemed to have everything under his control, and had a well-thought-out plan in his chest. It was not easy to scheme against him. At this point, are you still not going to tell me who you are? Bai Xiling smiled. I don't know what you're talking about. Wang Chong suddenly regained his composure, and said in a serious tone. He had reverted to his original appearance. As he spoke, he patted the back of his horse, and immediately urged it to turn around, heading to the other side. Hey, you can't do this. Bai Xiling panicked. You know what I'm talking about. I don't. With his back to Bai Xiling, Wang Chong's lips curled into a smile. This woman was too smart. It was not good for a woman to be too smart. But no matter how smart a woman was, in the end, she could not win against a man. Damn it! Bai Xiling gnashed her teeth. Looking at Wang Chong's back, she was so angry that she was about to go crazy. It was the same thing every time, pretending to be confused even though he knew what she was thinking. But there was nothing she could do about it. If Wang Chong did not admit it, nothing she said would be of any use. However, if you want to share the gold with us, I'll take it as a yes. Just as Bai Xiling was on the verge of going berserk, a voice drifted over from afar. Hearing those words, Bai Xiling's anger immediately turned into joy, and a gleeful smile crept onto her lips. In the end, no matter how smart a woman was, she was still a woman. Brat, at least you know your place. Bai Xiling urged her steed forward, and quickly followed behind Wang Chong. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had truly colluded with one another. When the two of them were exterminating the bandits, they had been working together. With the increase in their numbers, the success rate had also increased. It shouldn't be too much of a problem for them to complete the mission. On the other hand, Wang Chong had also gained a lackey. Using the words of Wang Chong's previous world, Bai Xiling was only tagging along with him to gain experience. Without the help of others, it would be difficult for Bai Xiling to complete the mission alone. But Wang Chong couldn't care less. In any case, he had already completed the first phase of the mission. Even if he was alone, he would still be exterminating bandits with an additional person. Furthermore, the 20 true martial realm veterans under Bai Xiling would be of great help to him as well. On top of that, Bai Xiling was born with a sharp mind, and she was simply too intelligent. Wang Chong couldn't trust a lady from the Bai clan to stay by Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's side. It would be better to leave a beautiful and intelligent demoness by his side. Xiao. The two arrows contained boundless power that could pierce through metal and split stone. They flashed across the sky like bolts of lightning, catching up to the two bandits who were fleeing in panic. Poo-pee sounds could be heard as the two bandits fell to the ground, pierced by the arrows. They tumbled down the cliff, and only after a long time did two muffled echoes resound through the air. I finally understand why Su Gan and Huang Yongtu lost to you. Before thinking about victory, first think about defeat. Before the battle had even begun, you had already calculated where they would escape to. Even if Su Gan and the others were to follow behind you, they wouldn't be able to see through your means. You simply have too many means hidden up your sleeves. It's not an injustice for them to lose. On the peak of the mountain, Bai Xiling was standing on a jagged boulder. Looking down at the scene at the waist of the mountain, she shook her head, revealing her snow-white neck, and let out a long sigh. When the two bandits were escaping, Bai Xiling had been worrying for nothing, thinking that they had failed this mission. Heavens! Who could have thought that two arrows would suddenly appear out of nowhere and claim their lives? Even now, Bai Xiling was still unable to see where the two cavalrymen Wang Chong had arranged were hiding. Hee, I knew I wouldn't be able to fool you. Facing Bai Xiling, Wang Chong placed his hands behind his back and chuckled lightly, as if he had expected it. Since he was with this lady from the Bai clan, Wang Chong didn't think that he would be able to fool her with his means. A cunning rabbit has 3 burrows and bandits have 3 means: hidden scouts, traps, and a means of retreat, of which a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. As long as one observes the location of a bandit, one should be able to deduce their final means of retreat based on the terrain. All one has to do is to arrange a few master archers to wait there. It's Su Gan and Huang Yongtu who have underestimated them. Knowing that the Imperial Army will come to encircle them regularly, how can they possibly survive here without some means? Wang Chong replied calmly. His tone was relaxed, and his expression was confident. His words carried a powerful charisma that made others subconsciously trust him. Speaking to a smart lady like Bai Xiling, Wang Chong was different from how he spoke to Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. Since he had accepted Bai Xiling into his group, Wang Chong didn't think that he would be able to hide it from her. Your words sure are interesting. Means. Bai Xiling turned around to look at Wang Chong's handsome face, and a hint of astonishment flashed across her eyes. Wang Chong's way of speaking and the words he used were different from ordinary people, even though she had never heard anyone use such words before. Bai Xiling could still roughly understand what he was trying to say. However, it's easier said than done. Knowing the terrain of the bandits doesn't necessarily mean that one will be able to deduce their retreat route like you do. Even if Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were to follow behind you and witness it with their own eyes, it would still be difficult for them to do so. In the end, it's all due to your own capability. Honestly speaking, even though you have been reluctant to reveal your identity, you are still a scion of a prestigious clan. I really can't understand how you, as a scion of a prestigious clan, know so much. I really can't understand how a scion of a prestigious clan, like you, could possibly know so much. The survival method of a bandit? This doesn't seem to be something that a scion of a prestigious clan would know, right? Bai Xiling asked curiously. The more she interacted with this fellow, the more curious Bai Xiling became. Many of the things that he spoke of were as simple as plain water, but in reality, they weren't easy to accomplish. In the end, it wasn't that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were weak. In truth, their actions were extremely normal, befitting of their background. The one who was abnormal was this fellow. For a 15-year-old young man to know so many things, and his actions were extremely mature and composed, wasn't it strange? Hee, that's another story. Wang Chong chuckled heartily, but he didn't satisfy Bai Xiling's curiosity at all. No matter what, he wouldn't tell anyone about his reincarnation. Move! Wang Chong waved his hands, and the reserve cavalrymen leaped over the fence and charged into battle. The reverberations of the true martial realm halo soon reverberated throughout the entire stronghold. The consequence of recruiting a smart lady like Bai Xiling to his side was that Wang Chong rarely resorted to tactics in battle, going straight for the kill. In front of a woman like Bai Xiling, it was best to hold back a little and hold back a little. Furthermore, the 40 true martial realm cavalrymen, from the two of them, were more than enough to deal with most of their opponents. In the end, bandits were still bandits. There was no way they could stand against these veterans. Be careful. Just as Zhang Xian was deep in thought, an anxious bellow suddenly sounded. Chi! A cold glint flashed across the night sky, and a sharp crescent saber flashed across the night sky in a massive arc, heading straight for Wang Chong and Bai Xiling. That person had been hiding in the darkness for quite some time. It was only when he determined that Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were the leaders of the cavalrymen that he slowly crept forward, bypassing the cavalrymen one after another, and swiftly made his move on the duo. This strike was released after accumulating power, and it was extremely swift and fierce. As the saber flashed, even the air was sliced into two, leaving behind two massive slashes. The sharpness of the saber was such that even metal would be sliced apart. Needless to say, flesh and blood. Chapter 335. My lord, be careful. My lord, be careful. Stop him. The crowd was in chaos. The sudden appearance of the majestic saber light had thrown the two teams of 40 people into chaos. Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were the leaders of this operation. If Wang Chong and Bai Xiling were to die during the mission, all of them would be punished by the Ministry of Military Personnel, and their deaths would be recorded in their files forever. To shoot a man, first shoot the horse. To capture the bandits, first capture the leader. In a regular battle, the enemy's generals and marshals were always the priority targets. It was also because of this reason that all the soldiers would fight to the death to protect their generals. If their generals were killed because they failed to protect them, it would be a huge dereliction of duty. But at this time, everyone had crossed the fence and entered the fray. Due to the distance, no one was able to come to the rescue of Wang Chong and Bai Xiling for the time being. The situation was extremely dangerous. Humph. Wang Chong sneered coldly. Looking at the dazzling saber glint above him, he drew his sword. Just as Zhang Xian was about to execute the 8 steps of the furious flood dragon to kill this true martial realm bandit, he suddenly heard a clear and melodious sound. Before the sound had even faded away, a snow-white figure rose from the ground like a flood dragon, moving even faster than Wang Chong, and attacking even faster than Wang Chong. Boom! This was the first time Wang Chong had seen Bai Siling in action. Her aura was boundless, and compared to before, it was as if she had become a completely different person. The aura on her body was swift and fierce. The extremely soft and gentle aura energy was vast and mighty, spinning rapidly outside her body. Under the moonlight, the layers of aura energy emitted rays of light that were as sharp as swords. In the face of that world-rending saber flash, Bai Siling didn't do anything. All she did was extend a jade-green finger. Her finger, which usually looked fair and delicate, was now exuding a silver-white light, as if it were a sword. Rumble! She stretched out her slender index finger and blocked the saber light. With just one finger, the saber light in the air froze. Almost at the same time, Bai Siling, who was in the air, lifted her leg. Her slender, graceful, and fair leg immediately kicked the figure who was sneaking up on her. Those who didn't receive that blow would find it hard to imagine what kind of terrifying power Bai Siling, a delicate, slender, and beautiful woman's body contained. In the darkness of the night, Wang Chong could clearly see the place where Bai Siling's sharp right foot had kicked. The man's body was bent like a shrimp, and his entire abdomen had sunk in. Bai Siling's kick actually went into his body. Bang! With a bang, his body, which weighed no less than 80 or 90 kilograms, flew out like a cannonball. With a loud bang, he smashed through more than 10 layers of fences and slammed into a tree that was more than 100 feet away. With a loud bang, with splinters swirled in the air, the man was kicked into the tree by Bai Siling. Silence! For an instant, the entire fort was deathly silent. Even the sounds of battle could not be heard. Bai Siling's fearsome kick had stunned everyone. Even Wang Chong was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Bai Siling to be so powerful. That slender body harnessed the fearsome strength of a tyrannosaurus. Gulong. Even though there was no expression on his face, Wang Chong could clearly hear his throat moving. A few of his throat muscles were involuntarily swallowing. As expected of a lady of the Bai clan. Truly powerful. This was the only thought in Wang Chong's mind. To think that he was still thinking of activating the 8 steps of the Furious Flood Dragon. Bai Siling's attack had definitely surpassed his 8 steps of the Furious Flood Dragon, reaching the level of his second sister and Marchioness E. It had been so many days, and yet he was still standing so close to her. If that kick had landed on him, he probably wouldn't have ended up any better than that fellow. How is it? Not bad, right? Bai Siling dusted her hands and landed on the ground lightly. Turning around, she looked at Wang Chong with a cold and arrogant smile. There weren't many opportunities to subdue Wang Chong. This was a rare opportunity. Along the way, she had been suppressed by Wang Chong, and she had been suppressing her anger for a long time. Now she was finally able to vent it. Not bad, not bad. Wang Chong's eyebrows twitched in embarrassment. Not only was this not bad, it was ridiculously good. It seemed like he would have to re-evaluate this woman. In the future, he would have to keep his distance from this woman. Lord, we've discovered a who. At this moment, a voice sounded in his ears. Wang Chong immediately recovered from his daze and walked toward the tree in the distance. There were several cavalrymen surrounding the base of the tree. One of the cavalrymen was holding a torch, and by the light of the torch, Wang Chong could clearly see them in the darkness. The person that Bai Siling had sent flying was a tall man with a long and curly beard. His head was wrapped in a black scarf. Not far from him, the blood-stained Arabian scimitar that had flown out of his hand was particularly striking. Arabian, this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. From the strange flash of saber light that had flashed through the air, Wang Chong had already known that this person was not from the Central Plains. The people of the Central Plains did not know how to use scimitars. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen an Arab in the stronghold during this mission. This mission is truly a complicated one. An Arab robbing an Arab. Who would believe it if I told them? A familiar voice came from behind him, as Bai Siling slowly walked over. On the road to the western regions, there are not only Hu Arabs and Han. He might have felt a little guilty about robbing the Arabs, but he had never done so before. But robbing Han people shouldn't have any psychological burden, right? With his back facing Bai Siling, Wang Chong smiled. Bai Siling's kick had been inconceivably powerful. The Arab's organs had ruptured, and he was already on his last breaths. "Who are you? Why are you here?" A cavalryman holding a torch shouted at the side. Humph. Although the Arabs had ruptured their internal organs, their vitality was extremely tenacious. He only snorted at the horseman's words, opened his mouth, and spat out a torrent of Arabic words. After saying that, he turned his head to the side, obviously unwilling to cooperate. "Who you? Who can understand this nonsense?" The surrounding cavalrymen were stunned. Everyone around him was stunned when they heard that string of nonsense. In the end, this fellow didn't know how to speak the Han language. "It's Arabic, not who." Bai Xiling also frowned. In the Central Plains, there were very few who knew the language of the Hu merchants of the western regions. And Arabia was even more remote than the western regions, belonging to the extreme west. The Tang dynasty rarely interacted with the Abbasid Caliphate, and those who knew Arabic were even rarer. I had held back a bit of my strength, wanting to give him a chance to breathe. But it seems like my efforts were in vain. It seems like I won't be able to get anything out of him. "Kill him," Bai Xiling said as she gestured for the cavalryman to strike. She thought that she would be able to get some information out of him, but it seemed like her efforts were in vain. "Wait a moment." Suddenly a voice sounded. Just as the cavalryman was about to strike, everyone heard another voice speaking in Arabic. This one was completely different from the one they had heard earlier. It was an even younger voice. "Arabic. You actually know Arabic?" Bai Xiling's eyes were wide open as she stared at Wang Chong in disbelief, as if she had just discovered a new continent. Although Wang Chong had never said anything, Bai Xiling was certain that he was the scion of some great clan in the capital. No one would believe that a scion of the capital could actually speak Arabic. This was simply inconceivable. Bai Xiling realized that she might have to re-evaluate this fellow beside her. Wang Chong said nothing, only smiled back at her before continuing to interrogate the Arab expert. The two of them chattered in Arabic, leaving the crowd completely baffled. But even a fool could tell that the Arab expert wasn't willing to cooperate. His replies were nothing more than "I won't speak. I definitely won't speak. You should just give up," and so on. Just when Bai Xiling was about to give up hope and believe that Wang Chong would never succeed, suddenly, Wang Chong said something, but the Arab expert paled, a hint of extreme panic appearing on his face. He looked at Wang Chong like he was looking at a demon. What happened next left Bai Xiling dumbfounded. After Wang Chong stuffed a healing pill into the Arab expert's mouth, the Arab expert, who had been prepared to die just moments ago, suddenly changed into a completely different person. He answered all of Wang Chong's questions without holding anything back. "Just what did you say to him?" Bai Xiling finally couldn't help but ask. By the time Wang Chong finished his questions, the Arab expert was already dead. Wang Chong's healing pill could only delay a true martial realm expert for a little longer. But this was not what Bai Xiling was concerned about. "It's nothing. I just told him that if he refused to cooperate, I will give him a grand funeral. I will give him a grand funeral of a heathen." Wang Chong nonchalantly said. "Ah." Bai Xiling was dumbfounded, and then she shook her head and smiled. She didn't know whether to praise Wang Chong or curse him. Although she hadn't interacted much with the Arabs, she knew that they believed in some sort of religion. If Wang Chong said that he would give him a grand funeral of a heathen, this would be even more difficult for him to accept than death. The grander the funeral, the more afraid he would be. As expected, it's even harder to accept than death. No wonder he looked at you like you were a demon. Bai Xiling shook her head and laughed. "Thank you for your praise." Wang Chong faintly smiled unconcerned. As long as he could achieve his goal, Wang Chong didn't mind being viewed as a demon by an Arab. The interests of the Arabs were not within his scope of consideration. "You're truly shameless," Bai Xiling jokingly scolded. "Thank you again for your praise." Chapter 336. The combined might of 40 true martial realm veterans was almost instantaneous. The vibrating halos of the true martial realm were as tough as steel, and wherever they passed, camps would crumble. The encirclement was almost over, and they would soon be able to withdraw. But Wang Chong's mind was still replaying the final words of that Arab expert. Wang Chong had only tried to interrogate him, but he hadn't expected that the Arab expert would actually reveal something useful. Did that fellow say anything? A faint fragrance like that of a lotus leaf came from behind him. Bai Xiling had examined the Arab expert before walking over. Compared to the battle with the bandits and the Arab expert, Bai Xiling was currently more interested in Wang Chong. It seems like this matter really does have something to do with the Yuzhen. Wang Chong came back to his senses and told her everything that Ma Song had told him, as well as what the Arab expert had said before his death. That Arab expert had originally been the bodyguard of a wealthy Arab merchant, but the merchant had unexpectedly been killed, while the Arab expert had managed to survive. As the Tang dynasty's military was too powerful, and he didn't have any means of making a living, he decided to become a bandit. He hoped that he would be able to gather enough money to return to the distant Abbasid Caliphate. However, because he was a lone wolf and was wary of the imperial court's regular army, he hadn't been able to make much progress. Not too long ago, he met an Yuzhen man. The other party promised that as long as Wang Chong followed his instructions, not only would he help him return to Arabia, he would even give him a death warrant. A death warrant? A hint of surprise flashed through Bai Xiling's eyes. Although he's called a bodyguard, he's actually a slave. If the master is dead but the slave responsible for protecting him is still alive, it's a crime punishable by death in Arabia. Even if he returns, only death awaits him. Wang Chong said. The hierarchy of the Arabs was even stricter than that of the Tang dynasty, and the slave trade was prevalent there. In this aspect, Bai Xiling had no experience, so naturally, she did not understand. Bai Xiling was deep in thought, but she did not pursue the matter. Did he say what Yuzhen looked like? Nope. He could distinguish between the Yuzhen, the Turks, and the people of the western regions. The other party only told him to come here, but did not restrict his movements. He only told him to move around as much as possible during this period of time, to create trouble for the Tang dynasty. He doesn't speak the same language as these bandits, and they don't even communicate. Wang Chong said. What are these Yuzhen people thinking? Do you think you can cause trouble for us just like that? Bai Xiling looked confused. Yuzhen's behavior was very strange to her. Although I don't know their true intentions, I'm not sure. However, the imperial court and the Holy Emperor had always placed great importance on the road to the west. If the road to the west is flooded with bandits and highwaymen, it will pose a great threat to the trade of the Tang dynasty. If this continues, those who merchants, Abbasid Caliphate, and Charax-Spazinu merchants might reduce, or even cancel their plans to come to the Tang dynasty out of consideration for their safety. The Yuzhen has always been hostile to the Tang dynasty. If the Tang dynasty and the western regions are cut off because of this, it will definitely be beneficial to the Yuzhen. The only thing I don't understand is that the Yuzhen should understand that His Majesty and the imperial court will not give up on this road to the western regions. Yuzhen's actions will only cause some interference for us. It's impossible for the imperial court to really give up on this place. After all, the western regions still has the Anqi protectorate. Wang Chong said. He was also very confused. The Silk Road of the western regions wasn't just an economic route for trade. It was also the lifeline of the Anqi protectorate. The military of the 4 garrisons of Anqi relied on this route to transport supplies. Just this point alone meant that the harassment launched by the Yuzhen wasn't enough to pose much of a threat. That's hard to say. If the imperial court doesn't pay attention to it, the imperial court won't do anything about it. If the imperial court doesn't pay attention to this matter, perhaps the Yuzhen might really succeed. However, there's one thing that I agree with you about the truth of the matter. For the Yuzhen to spend so much effort to incite these bandits and highwaymen to move about, it can't be as simple as just plundering. Bai Xiling had a pensive look on her face. Unknowingly, she had also been pulled into this train of thought by Wang Chong. That's right, Bai Xiling. Do you know of any Yuzhen diplomatic mission that has recently come to the capital? Wang Chong suddenly asked. Are you joking with me? I've been in Longwei training camp all this while. How could I possibly know something that even you don't? When have you ever seen us ladies concerned about politics? Bai Xiling rolled her eyes as though she was looking at a fool. Haha, I've misspoken. I forgot about you. You ladies aren't interested in politics at all. Wang Chong also came to his senses. He slapped his head and laughed heartily. The women around him, be it cousin Wang Zhuyan, Marchioness Yi, or even his mother and little sister, weren't interested in politics at all. This could be said to be a common problem among women. Bisiling was clearly the same as well. The battle came to an end quickly. The 40 veteran cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty swept through the entire stronghold before continuing on their way. There wasn't a single survivor in the stronghold. And in this stronghold, Wang Chong had earned an additional 200,000 gold taels. This was equivalent to Wang Chong's monthly income from selling Wuxia steel. Adding on his previous gains, Wang Chong now had a total of 700,000 gold taels. Even though Wang Chong was a wealthy man, he had to admit that wiping out these bandits was truly a great reward. Throughout the entire process, he didn't even need to make a move. All he had to do was to come up with a plan and command the troops. And this gold was flowing endlessly toward him. The Silk Road is truly a place of wealth. If even these bandits along the way can become so wealthy, I wonder how wealthy those highwaymen are. Wang Chong sighed. Regardless of which time-space continuum he was in, the Silk Road was always famous. It was a path forged from wealth. Wang Chong had only wiped out a few bandits, but he had already earned several 100,000 gold taels. And this was only a drop in the bucket for the westbound Silk Road. It was easy to imagine how prosperous the Silk Road to the west was from this point of view. On the westbound road, the bandits were actually not the real threat. Among them, there were only a few who had reached the true martial realm. The real threat came from those highwaymen who came and went without a trace and had extremely high mobility. They were the real threat on the westbound road. This was also one of the important reasons why the imperial court assigned Wang Chong and the others to be cavalry instead of infantry and archers. The highwaymen plundered much more than the bandits, and they were also much wealthier. Wang Chong was already beginning to look forward to how much income he could get from those highwaymen. If this situation continued, it wouldn't be a problem even if the city in Nanzhao was doubled in size. As they traveled westward, Wang Chong and the others gained more and more. When Wang Chong said that he would let Bisiling invest, Bisiling thought it was a joke. How could the capital's Bai family be short of money? Even the wealthiest families in the capital could not compare to the Bai family. It was just that the Bai clan had always maintained a low profile and pursued the strategy of concealing their strength. However, as she followed Wang Chong, Bisiling realized that she had underestimated the weight of Wang Chong's words. In a short period of time, she had already received 300,000 gold taels from Wang Chong, then 400,000, then 500,000. No matter how wealthy the Bai clan was, it was impossible for them to treat 500,000 gold taels lightly. And this sum of money was still increasing exponentially. Even though Bisiling was the daughter of the Bai clan and a direct descendant of the Bai clan, she had never received so much wealth in just a few days. This was already more than what she had spent in the past few years. If even she was able to receive so much as an assistant, it wasn't hard to imagine how much Wang Chong had received. Thus, Bisiling didn't stand on ceremony with him at all. On the other hand, Su Gan and Huang Yongta weren't fools either. Ever since they had tasted the sweetness of the harvest, they had also gone all out. Even though their harvest couldn't compare to that of Wang Chong and the others, it was still a huge sum for them. At the very least, it was impossible for them to obtain so much wealth from the Bai clan. Thus, the two of them were determined to compete with Wang Chong. As for Lieutenant Zhang Lin, as the supervisor of this operation, he was also glad to see the outcome. On the west path, a large number of bandits were eliminated. If this were to continue, the harvest Wang Chong and the others would receive would surely reach an astonishing figure. However, nothing on the road to the west could be calculated so simply. The operation of Wang Chong, Su Gan, and the others had wiped out the bandits one after another, and it had brought about an unexpected effect on the road to the west. Come up. Several hundred li away from Wang Chong's group, a stalwart figure more than 8 feet tall was standing on a hill, his arms as thick as bowls extending from his sleeves as he beckoned to the crowd outside. Hung long. The halos vibrated. At least 8 true martial realm experts stepped on the sharp halos and gathered all their strength. With the speed of lightning, they bombarded the body of the tall and sturdy figure from all directions. Dang! 8 surges of stellar energy struck the figure's body, but a resounding metallic reverberation echoed in the air. It was as if they had struck a massive piece of steel instead of a body of flesh and blood. Not only did the huge rebound force block the attacks of the 8 true martial realm experts, but it also scattered their aura cheese in one fell swoop. If one were to take a closer look, one would notice that a massive black chainmail condensed from stellar energy had appeared around the figure's body. The chainmail floated within the stellar energy, shrouding the figure from head to toe. Not only that, it had also deflected the attacks of the 8 true martial realm experts. Again. Chapter 337. Clatter. As the footsteps shook, another 4 majestic silhouettes joined the crowd. The halo of thorns under their feet vibrated, clearly indicating that they were true martial realm experts. At this time, the number of true martial realm experts attacking this person had already reached 12. Change sabers, someone shouted, and in the next moment, the 12 true martial realm experts drew out their shining long sabers at the same time. As bandits, it was never their style to fight barehanded. Only swords and sabers could be used to slash and kill. As soon as the 12 shining treasured sabers were drawn, the air was filled with a chilling and dangerous aura. Clang! With a flash of saber light, the 12 sabers shone brilliantly. Like lightning flashing through the dark clouds, they struck the figure in the middle of the hill. Pung! In a split second, the green-black iron cloak on that person suddenly floated up, like a peacock spreading its tail. It split into 12 petals, and abruptly spread outwards. Clang, 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 clang. Before the 12 sabers could strike the person's body, they were blocked by the bulging iron cloak. The sabers that had slashed Jean Laiwe struck the iron cloak, causing dazzling sparks to fly. Ha ha ha. Just as the 12 true martial realm experts were about to launch another attack, a deafening burst of laughter resounded in their ears. In front of everyone's eyes, the huge black iron cloak suddenly began to spin rapidly. The 12 iron cloaks were like 12 incomparably sharp swords, continuously slashing through the air, stirring up a violent storm. Clang, clang, clang. The 12 sabers were swept by the sharp edges of the iron cloak, and actually broke one after another. Everyone was shocked, and they retreated one after another. Pung! That person's reaction speed was extremely fast. Just as a trace of confusion appeared in the crowd, he directly punched out. Boom! A true martial realm bandit vomited blood, and was sent flying far away. Then came the second and then the third. For true martial realm bandits wanted to attack first, but before they could do so, they only heard a few swishing sounds. The iron cloak swept past and blood and flesh flew everywhere. The stellar energy outside their bodies was simply unable to block it. The few of them were greatly shocked, and they quickly retreated. Bang, bang, bang. That person took advantage of this moment to step on a chain of steps, throwing punches and palms. Bang, 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 like a tiger in a flock of sheep. One figure after another was sent flying by him. In front of him, the 12 true martial realm experts of the Highwaymen didn't even have the chance to form an alliance. Wherever they tried to form an alliance, that person would appear in advance and destroy their alliance. Pung, pung, pung. One figure after another was sent flying. That person's awareness, vision, and reaction speed were extremely fast. Although he was besieged by 12 people, he forcefully turned it into a one-on-one battle. He didn't have the advantage of numbers at all. This kind of shocking battle instinct was simply shocking. Seeing that there were only 4 people left, and they were no match for them, someone shouted anxiously, "Shoot the horse! Shoot the horse! Shoot the leader's horse!" His words drew the attention of everyone in the surroundings to a horse that was over 30 meters behind the man. It was an unusually tall and handsome horse with glossy fur and clear bones that was like a dragon. In an instant, the atmosphere abruptly changed. The burly figure, who was incomparably brave and unstoppable a moment ago, was stunned. He could not help but subconsciously turn around to take a look. Without a doubt, this warhorse was extremely important to him. It was his most prized possession. So, in the blink of an eye, no one knew who was the one who did it. With a flash of light, an arrow shot out from the crowd, heading straight for the dragon-like warhorse 10 zhang behind that person. Ah! The crowd exclaimed in shock. Clearly, no one had expected that someone would be so daring as to really do such a thing. That ear-piercing whistle was enough to shake one's soul. Just as the warhorse was about to be injured by the arrow, and there was no way they could save it from 10 zhang away, something suddenly happened. Wang. The air trembled and clouds drifted. A shadow emerged from that person's body, and like a bolt of lightning, it flew toward the warhorse in the distance. That speed was even faster than the arrow. La! The chainmail descended and extended, covering the entire warhorse. Pung! The arrow struck the chainmail, and with a deafening metallic clang, it was completely deflected by the chainmail. Wang! At almost the same instant that the chainmail blocked the arrow, a chilling killing intent flashed across that person's eyes. So, in an instant, he appeared before a true martial realm highwayman, and like a blossoming flower, he gripped the highwayman's head tightly, pinning him to the ground. Leader, that arrow wasn't shot by me. The highwayman raised his hands high, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Immense fear surfaced in his eyes. Only by experiencing it for himself would one know how fearsome the strength harnessed in the leader's 5 fingers were. That strength was as heavy as a mountain, and it wasn't something that he could withstand. In that instant, he didn't even have time to react before his head and temples were gripped. I know that it wasn't you. I even know that it wasn't you who shouted. That person sneered coldly, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. He exuded an indescribable sinister aura. Those 5 fingers were like the hands of the Grim Reaper, firmly grasping his life and death. Do you think that I'm going to kill you for that warhorse? Humph. Do you think that I don't know that you were planning to escape with a group of brothers last night? I hate those who seek refuge with me, but think that I'm a fool. After making use of me to deal with the Imperial Army, they would form a faction to escape. Speak. Do you think that you deserve death? A chill suddenly rose from the mountain. Seeing this sight, everyone was horrified, but not a single sound could be heard. It was only at this moment that everyone realized why their leader was so excited to gather everyone here to practice the Iron Cloak technique. It turned out that he was intending to make use of this opportunity to deal with that traitor. At this moment, the one who was the most fearful was the true martial realm highwayman. Last night, he had discussed pulling a group of people to run away and secretly set up a new mountain. It was late at night, when everyone was asleep. Furthermore, he had made sure that there was no one else in the vicinity, so no one would know about it. But he couldn't understand how their leader would know of such a secret matter. Leader, spare me, I don't want to hear your explanation. A bone-chilling voice rang out. Kacha! The 5 fingers that were like iron pincers retracted, and the huge head cracked like a watermelon. Red and white matter shot out, and it was truly a case of liver and brain being slaughtered. The lifeless headless corpse fell to the ground like a piece of wood. In that instant, silence reigned in the surroundings. Everyone fell silent out of fear. I hate it when people betray me. You should know what the consequences are if anyone tries to do anything behind my back. That person placed his hands behind his back and looked down on the crowd with a cold and authoritative gaze. The atmosphere was somber. Leader! In an instant, everyone's faces were filled with fear, and a dense mass of people knelt down. This was especially so for those who had a guilty conscience. They trembled in fear. All right, you can all disperse. That person waved his hand, and the crowd dispersed like a flock of beasts. At this moment, if one were to take a closer look, they would realize that there were all kinds of people in the crowd. There were Huuzan Arabians, Karakspazinu Gogurians, Han. There were all kinds of people here. They weren't just highwaymen either. There were quite a few highwaymen as well. It was rare to see such a complicated group, even on the Western Corridor. So, that person had made an example out of the crowd. With a flick of his wrist, he recalled the iron cloak from his beloved steed. The iron cloak flew back to him, and in an instant, It melted into surging stellar energy and seeped into his body, vanishing without a trace. Congratulations, leader. Your iron cloak technique has advanced to the next level, reaching the level of flight. Given time, you'll surely be able to reach the next level, turning the iron cloak into a bronze cloak. Chapter 338. Moreover, these soldiers always chose to attack in the middle of the night. Everyone was fast asleep, and this was the time when they were least vigilant. Moreover, everyone had returned to their lair, which made it easier to exterminate them. In addition, these soldiers are very familiar with the methods of the bandits. All the open and hidden sentries have been uprooted. Even the traps are of no use. That's why many people are actually killed in their dreams, without even realizing it. Snakes had their own ways, and rats had their own ways. As an official, he actually understood the methods of the bandits so well. This has never happened before. In addition, they didn't hold back at all. Everyone was annihilated. Not a single one escaped. Therefore, it caused a lot of panic among the mountain bandits. Right now there are already more than 10 groups of bandits that have come to us. More is expected in the future. From this point of view, it's not like there aren't any benefits. The middle-aged scholar smiled. There was always a benefit to the bandits. The most obvious benefit to the bandits was that the Iron Cloak highwaymen were growing stronger and stronger. At this point, they had already become one of the strongest bandits on the entire West Passage. On top of that, unlike other highwaymen, the Iron Cloak highwaymen were all-inclusive. Regardless of whether it was highwaymen or mountain bandits, as long as they submitted to them, they would be taken in. On the other hand, the leader of the Iron Cloak highwaymen, Iron Cloak Lee, possessed incredible means, and he was able to intimidate the highwaymen and bandits alike. This allowed the horse bandits and mountain bandits to unite as one, displaying great combat power. In time to come, just as the strategist of the Iron Cloak highwayman Joan had said, it wasn't impossible for the Iron Cloak highwayman to become the strongest highwayman on the west journey. But Chief, although those soldiers have helped us a lot, they are not as powerful as us. But we also have to guard against them. According to their route, I'm afraid they'll reach our territory in a few days. It's only right and proper for an official to catch a thief. However, the thief wouldn't just sit and wait for death. Let me ask you, how many people do they have? What are their strengths? Which troublesome people do you have? Have you investigated all of this? Iron Cloakley said. His words were directed at the crux of the matter, and the gleam in his narrowed eyes was truly frightening. Clearly, Iron Cloakley had some sort of grand scheme in mind. In the Iron Cloak bandits, as long as one was familiar with the leader's style, they would be able to predict what the leader would do next. I've already asked the bandits who were lucky enough to escape, and I've also sent people to investigate the places where they make their stoves and eat. According to my estimation, there should be about 80 of them. Moreover, they were all true martial realm experts. The ones leading them should be 4 students from the training camp, appointed by the Holy Emperor himself. There's a high chance that the royal court is cooperating with a few students from the training camp to use us bandits and highwaymen as practice. The middle-aged scholar stroked his beard. His eyes flickered as he deduced the truth. A student from the training camp? Iron Cloakley frowned. Even though he was a highwayman, he knew about the 3 new training camps in the capital. Moreover, it was personally appointed by the Holy Emperor. It was obvious that the imperial court attached great importance to this matter. This is rather troublesome. If we don't handle it well and kill these students, the imperial court will be in deep trouble. Iron Cloakley fell into deep thought. It was one thing to kill a few students, but if the royal court were to take this matter seriously, it would be a huge problem. Regardless of whether it was highwaymen or highwaymen, there was no way they could stand against the royal court. If Lord Iron Cloakley is afraid of trouble, wouldn't it be fine as long as no one knows about it? Besides, if you knew that they were students from the training camp, would you have given up on them? The middle-aged scholar said. Highwaymen and highwaymen were known to be robbers, and according to the laws of the Tang dynasty, they should have died more than 10 times over. After all, This leader of his had even killed the imperial army quite a few times. Yet, he was still spouting such insincere words at this moment. Ha ha ha, Zhouan, you truly understand me well. Since the students of the training camp will bring trouble to us, we won't let a single one of them get away. Pass down my orders. If anyone dares to leak the news of this operation, I'll skin them alive. Iron Cloakley laughed heartily as a cruel glint flashed in his eyes. A man is not a gentleman with a small heart. In the world of highwaymen, it was impossible to achieve anything without some viciousness and viciousness. Yes, Lord Iron Cloakley. Receiving the order respectfully, Zhouan lowered his head. Hee, officials can subdue bandits. But who says that bandits can't subdue officials? There's no need for them to come personally this time. Zhouan, make the necessary arrangements. This time we'll wipe them all out. Yes, Hung Long. As soon as those words were spoken, the mountain trembled, and a moment later, a horde of highwaymen and highwaymen surged out of the mountain like an excited flood. At a glance, there were Arabs, Turks, Uzan, Gogurians, Han, and so on. This group of highwaymen and highwaymen seemed to cover the entire sky, numbering around 600 to 700. This number far exceeded that of any group of highwaymen and highwaymen. This was a mixed force made up of dozens of groups of highwaymen and highwaymen. Tzz, a chilling autumn wind blew, and a cloud of dust rose from the path. An invisible force shrouded Wang Chong, Su Gan, and the others. But at this moment no one was aware of it. The autumn wind was silent. Several hundred li away, the atmosphere was still silent. No one seemed to be in danger. That lad sure is enviable. Beneath a red maple tree, Huang Yongta glared hatefully at Wang Chong, and Bai Siling, as they left a trail of dust behind them. After so many days, he must have amassed more than 2 million gold taels. Let's not compete with him. We're no match for him, Su Gan said. Over the past few days, they had been competing with one another, and he had long since lost the motivation to do so. There was no point in competing with him. Even though Su Gan didn't say it out loud, he had already accepted Wang Chong's superiority. Even though Wang Chong's martial arts realm was beneath him, his ability to lead troops and eliminate bandits was indeed superior to theirs. Even in terms of searching for gold, Wang Chong's performance was superior to theirs. You might be convinced, but I'm not. And that slut, Bai Siling, she actually defected to that brat, who was several years younger than her, and reeked of his mother's milk. Just the thought of it pisses me off. Huang Yongta spat hatefully. It was one thing if it was anything else, but despite working together with Su Gan to search for gold, their harvest still paled in comparison to that slut. Following behind that lad, Bai Siling was able to easily reap far more than the two of them. How could Huang Yongta feel comfortable? For once, Su Gan chose to remain silent. In truth, he had some opinions about Bai Siling as well. It was just that he didn't share the same opinion as Huang Yongtu. Su Gan, no matter what, I can't lose to that lass. I've checked the map, and there's a group of bandits 30 li ahead. Do you want to go? Huang Yongta turned to Su Gan and asked. Let's go. After a moment of contemplation, Su Gan leaped onto the back of his steed. Compared to Huang Yongtu's meaningless complaints, gathering gold was more practical. Su Gan knew that if he were to miss this opportunity, it would be difficult for him to earn gold in the future. Be careful this time around. Along the way, we've come across quite a few bandit camps that are empty. I have a feeling that our continuous extermination might have caused a chain reaction among the bandits. Su Gan held onto Ma Ju's reins and said hesitantly. It wasn't without reason that he was able to stand out among the many prestigious clans and be nurtured by them. Su Gan had a sharp intuition toward danger. In this period of time, he had already sensed that something had happened to the bandits. Ha ha ha, Su Gan, there's no need to make a fuss about nothing. We have already exterminated so many bandits. It would be weird if they didn't react at all. Bandits can't possibly stand up to the official army. We have more than 40 true martial realm experts here. Do you think that a dozen or 20 bandits can stand up to so many of us? Huang Yongta burst into laughter as he scoffed at Su Gan's intuition. Su Gan pondered for a moment, and he couldn't help but shake his head. Huang Yongta was right. The bandits only had 20 to 30 people at most, and they weren't particularly strong. No matter how indignant the bandits were, there was no way they would be a match for them. Hee, I've spoken too much. Let's go. The horses galloped, and a group of more than 40 people galloped towards another bandit camp 30 li away, in a grandiose manner. At this moment, the sky was clear, and the sun hung high in the sky. In the past few days, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had already completed the first phase of their respective missions. There was no need for them to be restricted by time anymore. They had to move out at night. Their target was now very clear. It was the gold in the bandits' camp. As for whether they had been discovered by the bandits, or how many bandits had managed to escape, that wasn't something they cared about. Di-da-da. Several hours later, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu finally arrived at the bandit camp along the main road. The 40 cavalrymen dived into the forest, heading toward the mountain peak. Unexpectedly, the journey was smooth sailing. Along the way, they didn't even encounter a single bandit scout. The mountain peak was completely silent, and there wasn't even a single bandit to be seen. Damn it, I've run into another group of bandits who have emptied and retreated. On the mountain peak, Huang Yongtu kicked open the gates of the bandit camp. Looking at the empty camp, he clenched his fists tightly and cursed furiously. This is bad. Just as he was at the peak of his rage, Su Gan's alarmed voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Look over there. In a daze, Huang Yongtu subconsciously turned his head around and looked in the direction Su Gan's finger was pointing at. At the foot of the mountain, on the winding road to the west, a huge cloud of dust was rising into the sky. A huge group of bandits and highwaymen were charging toward them with killing intent gushing out of them, brandishing gleaming swords and sabers. Upon seeing this sight, not only Huang Yongtu, everyone's face paled as well. Dang! Almost at the same time, no one noticed that in the empty stronghold, a nimble bandit had climbed up to the highest point of the stronghold and knocked on a large bell at the highest point of the stronghold. The resounding sound of the bell echoed across the entire mountain range, and at the same time, it pointed out the direction of the bandits and highwaymen. Not good, retreat quickly. Chaos broke out on the mountain peak. Su Gan led the group down the mountain at lightning speed. Huang Yongtu followed closely behind them. No matter how slow they were, it was clear that this was a trap waiting for them to take the bait. Chapter 339. A gentle breeze blew, and the leaves rustled in response. Wang Chong stood behind a red maple leaf at the top of the mountain, slowly circulating his energy to regulate his breathing. Inside his body, waves of blood-colored origin qi surged and surged like serpents. In the end, Wang Chong reeled it off like silk from a cocoon and stored it in the depths of his dantian through a special circulation. This blood-colored origin qi did not belong to Wang Chong, but to the little yin-yang technique, which he extracted from the bandits. Over the past few days, Wang Chong had been able to absorb the origin qi of the bandits almost every day. As the origin qi filled his body, Wang Chong's aura grew stronger and stronger. Even the little yin-yang technique had broken through its bottleneck and reached a small peak. Now, under the nourishment of the various origin qi, Wang Chong could clearly feel that the little yin-yang technique was extracting much more energy than before. However, it was a pity that Wang Chong had not broken through to the true martial realm, so he could not use this energy. All of the absorbed energy was stored by Wang Chong in a special way, in a special part of his dantian at the bottom of the sea. This was a secret qi storage technique from Wang Chong's previous life. The advantage of this qi storage technique was that when one's origin qi reached its peak and could no longer be raised, it could store extra energy in the body in case of a rainy day. Although Wang Chong's current strength could not be compared to before, this qi storage technique could still play an important role. My lord, just as Wang Chong was resting under a tree, his eyes closed, a loud voice rang out. Wang Chong opened his eyes and saw a high-spirited cavalryman of the Tang dynasty, striding out through the broken wooden gate of the stronghold, a long saber at his waist. My lord, the battle is over. Miss Bai has personally taken action and captured a bandit. However, Miss Bai wants you to go over personally, saying that she has something to discuss with you. The cavalryman walked up to Wang Chong and respectfully reported. Oh. Wang Chong raised his eyebrows slightly, a little surprised. Miss Bai was naturally Bai Siling. Because Bai Siling was a woman, Wang Chong's bodyguards called her Miss Bai in private. Bai Siling usually wouldn't call him over. Since she invited him over, something must have happened. This made Wang Chong secretly curious. Got it. I'll head over now. As soon as Wang Chong said that, he removed the pouch from his waist and opened it, revealing the soybeans inside. He placed it in front of Little Shadow and patted its neck. Watching Little Shadow happily stick its mouth into the pouch, he then turned around and walked inside. After passing through many gates, Wang Chong saw Bai Siling in the deepest part of the stronghold. The young lady of the Bai family sat on a large tiger skin chair, surrounded by 7 or 8 armed cavalrymen. No one spoke, and the atmosphere was heavy. What's wrong? Wang Chong smiled as he walked in from the door. It was rare to see such a serious Bai Siling. There's a problem. This guy is the leader of the bandits. You can ask him yourself. Bai Siling raised her snow-white sleeves and stretched out a white finger, pointing at a man tied up on the ground. Oh! Wang Chong's attention shifted from Bai Siling to the man on the ground. This man was about 30 years old and about 7 feet tall. He looked very righteous and had a heroic spirit. How rare! There's actually such a person among the bandits. Wang Chong raised his eyebrows, and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. The appearance was born from the heart. The bandits were involved in robbing, killing, and arson. Therefore, they never had a good aura. They were used to having angry eyes and fierce looks. It was rare to see someone like this man. Wang Chong immediately had a good impression of him. You're the chief of this bandit gang? Wang Chong walked over and asked. Yes. The man straightened his back and replied straightforwardly. Even though we're bandits, we've never robbed the Han or harassed the Imperial Army. You shouldn't have captured me, and you shouldn't have killed my men. Ha ha ha, it's rare to see a bandit like you acting so righteously. Bandits rob and rob, this is their livelihood. What other tricks can you come up with? Furthermore, the Imperial Court has always placed great importance on the road to the west. You should know how the Imperial Court deals with robbers, right? Do you think that you'll be spared just because you didn't rob the Han? Hearing those words, Wang Chong was amused. The man fell silent. I can tell you a piece of information in exchange for the lives of me and my brothers, the man said after a moment of silence. Tell me, what information can save your life? Wang Chong replied noncommittally. A piece of information that can save your lives, the man said. Wang Chong didn't say anything. He shot a glance at Bai Siling, only to see Bai Siling's calm expression. Clearly, she had already heard of it. Continue. Wang Chong retracted his gaze and looked at the chief of the bandit gang. Didn't you exterminate a large number of bandits previously? Didn't you notice that many of the bandits were completely empty? Don't you find it strange? Then what do you want to say? Are you saying that we're in danger because the bandits escaped? Hee hee. What if I were to tell you that all of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person? What would you think? That the surroundings suddenly fell silent. Wang Chong's lips parted, but he couldn't say a single word. He turned to look at Bai Siling, only to see Bai Siling nodding seriously. No one said anything. The man stared at Wang Chong. The atmosphere was solemn. All of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person. Only those who had personally experienced it would understand the weight of these words. Along the way, especially in the recent period of time, Wang Chong had noticed that many of the strongholds were empty. There wasn't a single bandit in sight. In truth, Wang Chong had noticed this a long time ago. However, Wang Chong didn't take it to heart. It was normal for the bandits to flee when they knew that the army was coming. But now, this man was saying that all of the bandits that escaped went to seek refuge with a single person. The nature of this matter was completely different. The bandits of a dozen or so strongholds added up to at least several hundred people. This was a significant force. Continue, Wang Chong said grimly. He wouldn't believe the words of another just because of a few words. At the same time, he wouldn't overlook some important information just because of his arrogance. I don't know if you know of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, but their leader, Iron Cloak Lee, is a vicious and powerful martial artist. More importantly, he has mastered the Iron Cloak technique, making him invulnerable to swords and spears. He's the true #1 expert in the region, between Longxi and the capital. Moreover, this person is lawless and unrestrained. He is extremely dangerous. As bandits, robbing is nothing out of the ordinary. But no matter how formidable a bandit is, he knows that he's no match for the army. But the Iron Cloak Highwaymen are different. They even dare to rob the army. Before this, at least 6 to 7 groups of soldiers have died in Iron Cloak Lee's hands. As a result, Iron Cloak Lee's reputation has soared, and he's extremely respected among the bandits and highwaymen. On top of that, Iron Cloak Lee is a highwayman who comes and goes without a trace. The royal court has tried to apprehend him before. However, as soon as the royal court gets stronger, Iron Cloak Lee will immediately flee to the northwest and hide in the depths of the mountains. Once the matter blows over, he'll appear once more. On the other hand, if a small group of soldiers were to appear, Iron Cloak Lee would just wipe them out to bolster his own prestige. All of the highwaymen and bandits in the region between Longxi and the capital view him as their leader. Right now, it's said that he has gathered 400 to 500 highwaymen and bandits under him. You've gone too far in your operation to exterminate the bandits. Not a single one of the bandits managed to escape. Most of them were so frightened that they ran over to Iron Cloak Lee's side. They wanted to pull Iron Cloak Lee over to deal with you. Some of the bandits even invited me to join them, but I'm just disdainful of Iron Cloak Lee's character. As the saying goes, commoners shouldn't fight with officials. As bandits, robbing is just for the sake of riches, but Iron Cloak Lee kills for the sake of killing. That's why I didn't join them. However, not too long ago, I received an invitation from the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, requesting for the highwaymen and bandits in the area to deal with the official army. The operation will be taking place in the next few days. I believe that you'll be the only group on the road to the west. If I'm not mistaken, you should be Iron Cloak Lee's target. As the man spoke, he swept his gaze across the crowd in the room. This was especially so for Wang Chong and Bai Siling. Clearly, the man also knew that these two youngsters were the main characters of this operation. Where's the invitation? It's here. The one who spoke wasn't the man but Bai Siling, who was seated on a chair made of tiger hide. With a flick of her finger, she took out a red invitation from her voluminous white sleeves and passed it over with 2 fingers. On the surface of the post, there was a black evil spirit protruding out. It had a fiendish expression and an evil appearance. It looked extremely terrifying. Iron Cloak Token. Beneath the malevolent ghost, Wang Chong saw 3 bold and majestic words that seemed to have been carved out by iron hooks. The sun, moon, and universe, clear air above and turbid air below. Snakes have their ways and rats have their ways. Today, 80 soldiers disregarded military orders and oppressed the Greenwood Forest, resulting in countless casualties among us. We hereby invite the heroes of the world to join us to uphold order in the Greenwood Forest and uphold the authority of the Greenwood Forest. We shall execute 80 rebellious soldiers to uphold the law. Inscribed Iron Cloak Lee. Looking at the words on the invitation, Wang Chong frowned. The man had said that the leader of the Iron Cloak bandits was a vicious and unscrupulous person, but the words on the invitation didn't seem to be written by an ambitious person at all. The invitation was written by the military advisor of the Iron Cloak bandits. Zhou and Iron Cloak Lee's documents have always been written by him. The same goes for the Iron Cloak Token. Seemingly knowing what Wang Chong was thinking, the man kneeled on the floor and explained. For 80 soldiers to know how many of us are here. This isn't a good sign. Chapter 340. As a daughter of the Bai clan, Bai Siling had always been an intelligent young lady. Furthermore, as a lady, there wasn't much that she needed to worry about. In truth, the conflict between Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and Wang Chong had been the focus of this expedition. As for Bai Siling, she had always been able to sit by the sidelines and watch from the sidelines. But this time, Bai Siling couldn't help but feel deeply worried. This expedition was issued by the royal court and the training camp. Even though they knew that there was danger ahead, they couldn't possibly give up. Furthermore, the Iron Cloak bandits didn't seem to be simple at all. Even until now, Bai Xiling hadn't found any traces of them. But they had already figured out how many people they had. This left Bai Xiling feeling uneasy, and it was also the reason why she called Wang Chong over. Xiling, it's not a big deal for them to know how many people we have. In the military, there's a method of counting the number of stoves. Our group of 80 are all veterans of the Tang dynasty, and it's common practice for us to cook with stoves. As long as they send their men around us, they'll know how many stoves we have. It's not a big deal at all. Wang Chong replied calmly. It didn't take long for him to figure out how the other party did it. What's your name? Wang Chong turned to the man on the ground. Li Zangqi. The man was taken aback for a moment, but he still straightened his back and reported his name. Li Zangqi slowly sensed that this young man with sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and a jade-like face, who appeared to be 16 or 17 years old, seemed to be the real leader of this trip. Furthermore, he had already told him about how formidable the Iron Cloak bandits were. But the young man didn't panic at all. On the contrary, he even pointed out that the Iron Cloak bandits were counting the number of people in their group. This left Li Zangqi with a bizarre feeling. This young man seemed to be different from ordinary people. Li Zangqi. Wang Chong nodded and glanced at him. It seems like you're quite familiar with the highwaymen on the Western Path. Let me ask you, if you were one of the Iron Cloak bandits, given your knowledge, when would they make their move? Right now, Li Zangqi said solemnly. Wang Chong and Bai Xiling looked at each other, and their expressions changed. You are too close to the Iron Cloak highwaymen's territory, only 100 li away. Based on the Iron Cloak highwaymen's usual style, they would never wait for the enemy to arrive at their territory before making a move. Instead, they were more accustomed to long-distance raids and taking the initiative to attack. This way, they would be able to catch the enemy off guard. Based on my understanding, I advise you to retreat while your men are still here and have yet to come into contact with the Iron Cloak bandits. Otherwise, with just the 80 of you, you wouldn't be a match for the Iron Cloak bandits. Li Zangqi said solemnly. His original intention was to remind Wang Chong and the others to hurry up. But after hearing his words, Wang Chong's expression suddenly changed. This is bad. We have to inform Su Gan, Huang Yongtu and the others. Wang Chong abruptly turned around, and without a word, he dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Li Zangqi thought that all of them were here. But Wang Chong knew that that wasn't the case at all. Perhaps, one group of soldiers would head up the mountain to suppress the Iron Cloak bandits, while the other would wait at the foot of the mountain. However, their group was different. Based on his understanding of Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, they weren't at the foot of the mountain at all. It was likely that as soon as the two of them set off, these two men would rush out with their army and rush to another stronghold 30 miles away. That place was only 70 li away from the Iron Cloak bandits' territory. If the Iron Cloak highwaymen preferred to take the initiative, that meant that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu would be in great danger. Everyone retreat. Hurry up. A thought suddenly struck Bai Xiling, and she leaped up from her chair as if she had been electrocuted. Without any hesitation, she quickly followed behind Wang Chong and dashed out of the stronghold. Nay! With the neighing of war steeds, the entire stronghold fell into chaos. Realizing the danger they were in, the 40 Tang dynasty cavalrymen charged out furiously from the top of the mountain, not even bothering to clean up their spoils of war. Dust billowed on the main road as the 40 cavalrymen charged toward a stronghold 30 li away. Even though he had many conflicts with Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, Wang Chong didn't wish for them to be killed by the bandits and highwaymen just because of that. More importantly, other than Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, there were 40 loyal cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty with them. For a cavalryman who had dedicated his life to the Tang dynasty to be killed by bandits and highwaymen, this was a humiliation and a disgraceful ending. Wang Chong had spent his entire life on the battlefield, so he could understand this feeling better than anyone else. Thus, he couldn't allow such a thing to happen. Jaya! The white-hoofed shadow beneath Wang Chong seemed to have sensed its master's intentions and galloped forward with all its might. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had set off very early. Taking into account the time they had spent on the mountain, it would take at least several hours for them to reach the stronghold 30 li away. For the first time, Wang Chong felt that a journey of 30 li felt so long. I hope that I can make it in time. Wang Chong clenched his fists tightly. At this point, he could only hope that the Iron Cloak highwayman wouldn't make a move so quickly. Or perhaps, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu hadn't met them yet. Long. Several hours later, when they were still around 10 li away from their destination, they could see a huge cloud of yellow sand rising into the sky. Amidst the yellow sand, men and horses neighed, and war cries could be heard. In an instant, an innumerable number of people had gathered in the area. This is bad. Seeing the huge cloud of yellow sand, Wang Chong and Bai Siling felt their hearts turn cold, and the blood drained from their faces. We are too late. Bai Siling's lips quivered and her face paled. No matter how slow she was, she could tell that they were too late. Judging from the surging yellow sand and the imposing aura, there were more than 100 highwaymen gathered there. To be able to gather so many of them, it was likely that they were the Iron Cloak highwaymen that Li Zangqi spoke of. At this moment, Wang Chong's complexion wasn't any better than Bai Siling's as well. Just based on the imposing aura, Li Zangqi's evaluation of the Iron Cloak highwayman wasn't wrong at all. On the road between Longxi and the capital, the Iron Cloak highwaymen were without a doubt the number one group. What should we do now? Bai Siling reined in the reins and turned to look at Wang Chong with a dazed look on her face. She was skilled in martial arts, and she was the daughter of a prestigious clan. She was one of the few women in the world who had her own opinions. But at the end of the day, she was still a girl. She had never experienced this kind of confrontation between two armies and a military-like battle before. On top of that, the other party had the advantage in numbers. From a distance of more than 10 li away, it would be difficult for one to hear their words if they didn't raise their voices. It would be difficult for the 40-odd cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty to deal with hundreds of highwaymen and highwaymen. If they advanced, they wouldn't be a match for them. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others would surely die if they retreated. Faced with this difficult decision, Bai Siling was caught in a dilemma. She subconsciously turned to Wang Chong, hoping to find some support from him. Along the way, Wang Chong's decisiveness, courage, and decisiveness had left a deep impression on her. At this moment, Bai Siling instinctively chose to trust Wang Chong's judgment. Battle cries sounded from afar. Bai Siling and the 40-odd cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty had their gazes on him. Everyone was waiting for his decision. In that instant, Wang Chong felt a heavy weight on his shoulders. A familiar feeling welled up in his heart, and in that instant, Wang Chong felt as though he had returned to the time when he shouldered countless expectations. Back then, everyone was looking at him with the same gaze. Time seemed to have come to a standstill. All that could be heard was the thumping of his heart. It felt as though countless centuries had passed, but it also felt like an instant. Wang Chong soon calmed down. Calm down. Wang Chong suddenly spoke, his voice exuding a soothing power that made them calm down and calm down. There are still battle cries in the distance. This means that the battle isn't over yet. In other words, there's still hope for Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. Otherwise, we wouldn't have heard any battle cries here. Those words jolted the uneasy crowd back to their senses. That's right. If the battle was over and Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were dead, they wouldn't have heard any battle cries. If there were battle cries, it meant that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were still alive. This was a simple logic. But if not for Wang Chong's words, no one would have thought of this possibility. In that instant, everyone turned to look at Wang Chong in awe. This lad is truly a born leader. Bai Siling looked at Wang Chong with a hint of astonishment in her eyes. With just a single sentence, Wang Chong was able to stabilize the morale of the army. He was truly a born leader. This made Bai Siling rejoice that she had made the right decision along the way. The art of war is to know one's enemy as well as oneself. Regardless of whether we fight or retreat, we need to know the other party's strength and fighting prowess before we can make a decision. If it's within our means, we will save Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. If it's impossible, we will retreat immediately to avoid further losses. As a general, we must avoid letting our emotions get the better of us. I hope that you all understand this. Also, no matter what we do later on, I hope that everyone will obey my orders. I hope that everyone will obey my orders obediently. You mustn't let your emotions get the better of you, understand? Wang Chong said those last words with a grim expression. There were only 40 of them, and they were vastly outnumbered by the other party. If they couldn't obey his orders and march in unison, they would only be courting death if they charged in. Yes, Lord. This time, without Bai Siling's orders, all of the Tang Dynasty cavalrymen, regardless of whether they were under Wang Chong or Bai Siling, obeyed his orders. In this period of time, Wang Chong had won their respect and trust through his actions. Chapter 341. The atmosphere suddenly turned solemn, and an invisible killing intent emanated from these Tang Dynasty veterans. It was as if they were about to step onto a fierce battlefield. Bai Siling could clearly sense the changes in her surroundings, and a dazed look flashed across her beautiful eyes. She looked at Wang Chong's figure, and her vision suddenly blurred. The figure of this 15 or 16-year-old youth suddenly became mysterious and tall in her eyes. Wang Chong did not notice the change in Bai Siling at this moment. Looking at the boundless killing intent and fighting spirit emanating from the 40 Tang Dynasty veterans, Wang Chong nodded in his mind. Although the Tang Dynasty was showing signs of weakness, the empire still shone brightly, and these soldiers of the Tang Dynasty were still the same as he remembered. With a troop like this, not to mention bandits and highwaymen 10 times their number, even if they were facing a regular army 10 times their number, Wang Chong would still dare to lead them into battle. Siling, when the battle begins, I'll have to trouble you to cooperate with me. Wang Chong suddenly turned his head to Bai Siling and said, Ah. Bai Siling was in a flurry, as if she had not expected Wang Chong to call her, but she quickly covered it up. All right, don't worry, I'll do my best to cooperate with you. Bai Siling nodded seriously. As a daughter of the Bai family in the capital, Bai Siling quickly returned to normal. All right, let's go. Wang Chong squeezed his horse's belly, and the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalry immediately galloped toward the direction of the distant battle cries. Chief, the other cavalry is coming. Just as Wang Chong and the others were rushing over, a pigeon descended from the sky. On the slope beside the official road, there was a dense forest, and a rugged boulder stood on the side of the road. On the boulder, the military advisor of the Iron Cloak Highwayman, Zhouan, stretched out his right hand and caught the pigeon. He opened the letter on its leg and passed it over to the towering leader of the Iron Cloak Highwayman, Iron Cloakly. Ha, since they're already here. Then passed down the order to slow down the offensive. It wasn't easy to lure them here. I don't want to scare them away. Yes, leader. Zhouan received the order and left. It didn't take long for this order to spread throughout the entire Iron Cloak Highwayman. This allowed Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others to catch their breath. Di-da-da. Roughly half an instance's time later, a cloud of dust rose on the official road to the east. Leading the way, Wang Chong finally saw the scene of the battle. On the official road several li away from where Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others were supposed to attack the bandits and highwaymen dressed in all sorts of clothes filled the sky. Like a tidal wave, they covered the official road, the forest, the slopes, and the treetops. Under the encirclement of these bandits and highwaymen, Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others were like reefs in the middle of the ocean, isolated on a slope 30 zhang away from the official road. The air was filled with the pungent stench of blood. Corpses of bandits, highwaymen, soldiers, and steeds were strewn all over the ground. Seeing this sight, the eyes of Wang Chong, Bai Siling, and the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen reddened. This was the first time the 80 cavalrymen had suffered such a heavy casualty. On the slope, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had barely managed to fend off the attacks of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen by relying on the trees and the surrounding terrain. However, the number of Tang Dynasty cavalrymen by their side had dropped from 40 to 24. In total, 16 to 17 veteran cavalrymen of the Tang Dynasty had died in the forest. Every single one of the Tang dynasty cavalrymen was a true martial realm expert, and they had been through countless battles. This kind of loss could be said to be disastrous. But what was even more unbearable was that these respected veterans of the empire had died in the hands of these bandits and highwaymen. Lord, I want to kill them all. Beside Wang Chong, Ma Song and the others clenched their fists tightly as their eyes reddened in fury. The other cavalrymen also felt agitated. A warrior could die on the battlefield without regrets, but they shouldn't die in the hands of bandits and highwaymen in disgrace. Have you forgotten what I told you? Calm down. We must kill these Iron Cloak highwaymen, but we can't just charge in like this. Look at the other side. How many of them are there? Taking a deep breath, Wang Chong stopped the crowd. At the same time, a raging flame was burning in his heart. Having spent his entire life on the battlefield, Wang Chong could empathize with the emotions of a soldier more than anyone else. Furthermore, even though those soldiers died in the hands of the highwaymen, in the end, they died protecting Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. At the very least, their deaths are honorable. Wang Chong's final words were effective. The eyes of Ma Song and the others immediately cleared up. That's right, as a warrior, no matter what, the first and most important task was to protect their commander. Even though Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others weren't members of the military, from the moment they received their orders, they had become the commanders of the cavalrymen. From this point of view, their deaths were honorable. Otherwise, given their capabilities, there was still a good chance that they could have survived. Lord, feel free to speak. We'll do as you say. Ma Song and the others regained their clarity of mind, and their expectant gazes fell on Wang Chong. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Wang Chong fell silent for a moment before he suddenly patted his steed and leaped out of the formation. Everyone wait here. Without my orders, no one is to come into contact with them. As his voice echoed in everyone's ears, Wang Chong was already at the front of the formation, less than 50 zhang away from the Iron Cloak highwayman. Behind him, Bai Xiling was silent for a moment before gritting her teeth and chasing after Wang Chong. These Iron Cloak highwaymen aren't simple. Bai Xiling gritted her teeth and said, the number of true martial realm experts they have isn't any lesser than ours. It's not just that they have more true martial realm experts than us. Wang Chong sighed and spoke with a voice that only Bai Xiling could hear. The highwaymen had always been stronger than the bandits. In the previous missions, Wang Chong and the others had barely met any true martial realm experts. However, this group of highwaymen couldn't be judged using common sense. Even though they made up the majority of the group, there were still several hundred of them who were beneath true martial realm. Just the true martial realm highwaymen alone numbered at least 70 to 80. Their strength was truly astounding. If the cavalrymen in the military were well-trained, experienced, and coordinated with one another, they would have been able to defeat the highwaymen easily. Wang Chong would have long given up on the idea and fled the moment he saw the highwaymen. Xiling, haven't you realized it yet? They look like a bunch of ragtag bandits, but someone is able to maneuver them into a tight formation. They surrounded Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others on a slope where the terrain is complicated and the trees are dense, making it difficult for cavalrymen to exert their might. Even though Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others managed to stop them with the help of the map, but at the same time, they were also trapped there. If a cavalryman were to dismount, would he still be a cavalryman? There must be an expert among the highwaymen. Wang Chong sighed. A group of powerful highwaymen wasn't fearsome, because they didn't know how to coordinate with one another. On the battlefield, a well-trained army could easily crush a group of highwaymen of equal strength. However, if the highwaymen were to learn how to coordinate with one another, everything would be different. Are you talking about the military advisor? Bai Xiling was taken aback. That's not what I'm worried about. Didn't you notice? When we arrived here, the battle cries suddenly lessened significantly. Wang Chong said, you mean? Bai Xiling was taken aback. Then, as if she had thought of something, her face suddenly paled. Wang Chong nodded, confirming her conjecture. If I'm not mistaken, that person is quite ambitious. The appearance of Wang Chong and Bai Xiling didn't just attract the attention of the highwaymen. On the slope, Su gone, Huang Yongtu, and the others also noticed the commotion. Xiling and the others are here. Beneath the tree, Huang Yongtu propped himself up and looked at the army on the main road with trembling agitatedly. It had only been a few hours, but Huang Yongtu had never felt this long in his life. For a moment he was on the verge of despair. There was no way the 40 Tang dynasty cavalrymen would be able to fend off 700 highwaymen and highwaymen. Huang Yongtu was only hanging on by his will to survive. Never had Huang Yongtu thought that it would be Wang Chong, and Bai Xiling, who would come to his rescue in his moment of despair. He opened his mouth, wanting to call out Wang Chong's name. But at this moment, he awkwardly realized that even though they had been traveling together for so long, he still didn't know Wang Chong's name. It's useless, they won't be able to reach us. Just as Huang Yongtu was getting excited, a basin of cold water suddenly splashed over him. Lieutenant Zhang Lin's chest was heaving up and down, and his face was pale. Due to overexertion, he looked extremely feeble. On the other hand, his body was already riddled with wounds due to the intense battle, and fresh blood had already dyed his body red. Even though Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were the leaders of the group in name, the true leader was actually Zhang Lin. He was the one who had single-handedly fended off the enemy's relentless assault and saved Su Gan and Huang Yongtu. But at the same time, his injuries were far more severe than anyone else's. At this moment, Zhang Lin had no idea how much longer he could hold on. It was the duty of a soldier to follow orders, and the only thing driving Zhang Lin to persevere on was to ensure that Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were safe. On top of that, he couldn't allow himself to be humiliated and die under the blades of a highwayman. This was Zhang Lin's conviction. Lieutenant Zhang is right. There are too many of them. We aren't a match for them at all. Even if Xiling and the others were to join us, it would still be the same. Besides, the leader of the highwaymen hasn't made a move yet, and you've seen how fearsome he is. There's no way he will allow us to escape. Xiling and the others are just sending themselves to their deaths. Chapter 342. As the leader of this operation, Su Gan had 20 cavalrymen protecting him with their lives. But even so, he had still sustained severe injuries. The current Su Gan was no longer as competitive as he used to be. At this point, he could only hope that Wang Chong and the others wouldn't fall into the same trap as them. Bullshit. Xiling and the others are our only hope at the moment. Do you all wish to die? You may wish to die, but I don't. Xiling. Huang Yongtu abruptly leaped into the air and beckoned to Wang Chong and Bai Xiling. He had long forgotten that Bai Xiling was still a fickle and traitorous slut in his eyes. Ha, pass down my orders. No one is to shoot arrows. Let him shout. No one is to stop him. At the back of the formation, Iron Cloakly roared with laughter. Yes, Chief. Wait a moment, don't make it too obvious. Have the bandits on the east side prepare for battle. Yes. A few highwaymen immediately rode off to carry out the orders. Even though they were highwaymen, they had the ability to pass down orders, to command, to defend, and to shoot arrows. They were no longer ordinary highwaymen but soldiers. On the other side, Wang Chong and Bai Xiling also heard Huang Yongtu's voice. Even though Wang Chong and Bai Xiling didn't get along with Huang Yongtu, they couldn't help but feel ripples in their hearts upon hearing Huang Yongtu's desperate plea. Xiling, do you know how to shoot arrows? Wang Chong suddenly asked. I do. Why? Bai Xiling replied. For the moment, she couldn't fathom Wang Chong's intentions. Shoot an arrow for me and bring something over. Wang Chong said calmly. His gaze swept across the Iron Cloak highwayman before him, and he had a rough idea of what to do. What Su Gan and Huang Yongtu need right now is to stabilize the morale of their troops. On top of that, after fighting for so long, they have suffered quite a few casualties. Even Su Gan and Zhang Lin are injured. We need to replenish them with healing pills. Understood. Bai Xiling looked at the youth beside her, who was younger than her, and her beautiful eyes flashed with a trace of admiration. Bai Xiling felt an indescribable admiration for this young man who had always been secretive and never even mentioned his background, yet had the white-hoofed shadow, the royal steed of the white-hoofed shadow. No matter what problem or predicament he encountered, he always seemed to have a solution, always had his own ideas and never panicked. There was always a calming power in him. Following such a person, even if they were in prison, they couldn't help but forget. This young man possessed a strength that others could rely on and trust in. Bring me the arrow. Bai Xiling waved her hand and soon, someone handed over a big iron bow. In the Bai family, Bai Xiling was one of the few people who dabbled in archery, and her cultivation was very high. Wang Chong had asked the right person. The army had simple charcoal pens for writing envelopes, which were used in emergencies. Using the unit of measurement, every 10 soldiers would have one of these things. Wang Chong tore a piece of cloth and swiftly wrote a few lines of words on it. Then he passed all of the recovery pills he had on him to Bai Xiling. Boom! In the next moment, Bai Xiling drew her bow and shot Wang Chong's letter along with the recovery pills. The arrow traversed a distance of 100 zhang and struck the tree behind Huang Yongtu. The white feather of the arrow trembled in the air. Bastards! Aren't these fellows being too arrogant? 500 feet away, a savage-looking bandit could not help but spit fiercely on the ground when he saw this scene, and cursed. Even though the military advisor and leader had ordered them not to touch them for the time being, these fellows were being too arrogant. However, these fellows were too arrogant, treating them as if they were nothing. We have so many people on our side, why should we be afraid of them? A spit from each of us is more than enough to drown them. Isn't the military advisor being a little too cautious? Indeed, they're just 2 kids who are still wet behind the ears. How can they be leaders? Brothers, take them down. Kill the men and have fun with the women. That a commotion immediately broke out among the bandits. Mountain bandits and bandits had always been free, undisciplined, and lawless people. If they were facing a powerful enemy, they might still obey the orders of Iron Cloak Li and the others. But now Wang Chong and the others only had a few dozen of them, and they were led by 2 kids. For a moment, the bandits had forgotten about the might of Wang Chong and the others when they wiped out the bandits, and they were itching to make a move. Chief, the brothers of the bandits who just joined us are starting to get restless. A valiant-looking highwayman suddenly pointed to the distance and said, They forgot about the orders we gave earlier. Should we go over and restrain them? There's no need for that. The one who said those words wasn't Iron Cloak Li but the military advisor Zhou, and let them be. They won't learn to be obedient if they don't suffer some losses. If some of them die, they will be more obedient. At the same time, we can also test the strength of this group of soldiers and consume some of their strength. Zhou said emotionlessly as he stroked his beard. According to the intelligence they had received, there was a group of soldiers who were well versed in the means of bandits, and none of the bandits were able to escape from them. The group on the slope clearly wasn't as formidable, and there was nothing special about them. From the looks of it, it could only be the group on the other side. The highwayman hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Iron Cloak Li. Iron Cloak Li's face remained impassive, and he simply nodded slightly. Understanding the other party's intentions, the highwayman fell silent. Based on the intentions of Zhou and the military advisor, they intended to let the Eastern highwayman have a taste of Wang Chong's skills. However, things didn't develop as they expected. Xiling, it seems like they have a problem with that arrow of yours? Wang Chong immediately sensed the restlessness of the bandits. Why? Are you going to surrender? Bai Xiling chuckled softly. Unknowingly, she had been infected by Wang Chong's mood. In such a precarious situation, it was impossible to laugh. But when she was with Wang Chong, she couldn't help but forget this point. How can that be? Since they want to make a move, we might as well fulfill their wish. There's no need for them to make a move. Let's head over ourselves. Wang Chong smiled. What do you intend to do? Bai Xiling rolled her eyes at Wang Chong, and even Wang Chong couldn't help but fall into a daze. First echelon, step out. Second echelon, get ready. Wang Chong waved his hand, and 5 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen immediately stepped out. Their auras were in sync, and their steps were in sync. They were like unsheathed swords, giving off a feeling of sharpness. Xiling, I'll have to trouble you to come with us. As Wang Chong spoke, He unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the sky. Rumble! The next moment, like a silver vase breaking, the first echelon of Tang Dynasty cavalrymen, along with Wang Chong and Bai Siling, roared out like dragons emerging from the sea. Although they were only 7 people, they exuded the aura of an army of thousands. In that instant, it was as if the entire earth was trembling beneath their feet. This was the first time Bai Siling had seen Wang Chong's troops move out. They had all received their troops on the same day, and they were all of the same strength and realm. But the 5 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen under Wang Chong gave off a completely different feeling. It was no longer the feeling of being a bystander when he and Bai Siling surrounded the bandits. Instead, it was a soul-stirring feeling. It was as if the troops they had received belonged to 2 completely different armies. Hung long long. With the neighing of their steeds, Wang Chong's troops increased their speed. Even when they were about to reach the Iron Cloak highwaymen, they showed no signs of slowing down. Waves of tyrannical yuan qi surged into the bodies of those warhorses, and then turned into rippling martial arts halos under the warhorses. In an instant, the aura of the 5 cavalrymen increased by more than 2-fold. The might of a cavalry could only be brought out through a relentless charge. As long as their steeds did not stop, they would be the strongest force on the battlefield. No one could withstand the charge of a cavalry of the same level, and this included the Iron Cloak highwaymen. Wang. Seeing that there were only 7 of them, but the great Tang army was still advancing relentlessly without any signs of stopping, the bandits finally fell into disarray. Damn it! Do these fellows really think that they can deal with the 600 of us with just the 7 of them? They're committing suicide. Bastards, these fellows are crazy. Careful, careful. Amidst the neighing of Nei's steed, the 7 of them charged right into the midst of the bandits like a bolt of lightning. The furious curses soon turned into chaotic screams and shouts. No one could withstand the charge of 7 true martial realm experts. The combined might of their steeds and their riders was far beyond what these bandits could withstand. Pung pung pung. The hooves of the steeds crushed the bones of the 7 bandits, sending them flying high into the air. Before they could even land on the ground, they were already deader than dead. In just a single clash, the Iron Cloak highwaymen had lost 7 of their men. But this was far from the end. The might of a cavalry didn't just lie in their first charge, but in their relentless charge. Nay. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Be careful. The scene was in chaos. The charge of Wang Chong and the others was only the beginning of the first wave of attacks. In the next moment, spears and swords rained down. The bandits only felt their vision blur. And before they could even react, they'd already been pierced through by the iron spear and perished. The mountain bandits who lived in the mountains and robbed the passing merchants were no match for the well-trained and battle-hardened regular soldiers. A single cavalryman might not amount to much, and the threat they posed to the mountain bandits was rather limited. However, when 2, 3, 4, 5, when a group of cavalrymen appeared and coordinated with each other, no bandits who only knew how to fight one-on-one would be able to stand against them. Pew. The metal spears were as dense as rain, stabbing out like poisonous dragons, throwing the surrounding bandits into the air. The cold light that flickered in the air was like the scythe of the god of death, taking away one life after another. Blood sprayed in the air, and miserable screams rang out one after another. The bandits who were still clamoring madly a moment ago had suddenly become prey for the 7 of them. In just a short period of time, more than 20 bandits had died in the first wave of attacks from the 7 of them. On the other hand, not a single person on Wang Chong's side was injured. This was the might of the Tang Dynasty's cavalry. Chapter 343. Kill them. Kill them. Don't let those fellows get away. We have the advantage in numbers. We'll crush them to death. Kill. On the official road to the east, although the bandits had lost more than 20 people in an instant, the continuous deaths had also aroused the viciousness in the hearts of the bandits. If Wang Chong's group had hundreds or even thousands of men, the bandits might still be fearful. However, there were only 7 of them. No matter how many men they had, it was impossible for them to stand against the 600 to 700 of them. In an instant, hundreds of bandits swarmed over from all directions, reducing the space that Wang Chang's group could operate in. Even if they had to exhaust Wang Chang's group to death. What should we do? Amidst the dense crowd, Bai Xiling turned to look at Wang Chong. Her sword moved swiftly, and the war steed beneath her feet pulsed with halos, sending the surrounding bandits flying. Bai Xiling was a true martial realm expert, and her strength was on par with Marchioness Yi and Wang Zhuyan. However, even she felt the pressure from such a dense encirclement. Her smooth forehead was filled with sweat, and her stamina and origin energy had been greatly depleted. Don't panic, Wang Chong said calmly as he observed the movements in the surroundings. Of the group of 7, his cultivation realm was the lowest, still at origin energy realm. But in this chaotic battle, Wang Chong had an easier time dealing with the situation than Bai Xiling. This was the environment of the battlefield, and Wang Chong's bloodline and bones had long gotten used to being surrounded by enemies. Furthermore, it wasn't as if he couldn't make use of the chaos. At the very least, Wang Chong's sword chi of life-slaying became even more difficult to defend against in this environment. Index finger, middle finger, ring finger. Wang Chong's 10 fingers moved in turns. Strands of extremely dense sword chi crisscrossed the air, constantly shooting out and shooting into the forehead, neck, and heart of the bandits. Moreover, there were many times when Wang Chong's sword chi was clearly aimed at a single bandit, but in the next moment, these sword chi as thick as a finger would pass over that bandit's shoulder and shoot into the body of another bandit 10 meters away. This kind of pointing and attacking made Wang Chong's lethality increase exponentially. Among the 7 of them, in terms of the number of kills, perhaps only Bai Xiling, who was the strongest and had the highest realm, could compare with him. Almost there, Wang Chong kept his eyes and ears open, sensing the situation of the bandits surrounding him. When he felt that the situation was about right, Wang Chong sat on the back of his horse and clenched his right hand into a fist. He raised it up high, leaving only his thumb sticking out and pointing it at the sky. Boom! Just when the bandits were about to drag Wang Chong's group into the sea of people and completely surround them, the 5 cavalrymen of the second echelon suddenly leaped out from the rear of the formation. It was as if a mountain had collapsed. Boom! They covered a distance of 50 zhang in a single leap. The 5 cavalrymen of the second echelon were like 5 sharp blades, charging into the sea of bandits with an unstoppable momentum. The same thing happened once more. Before the charging cavalrymen, one bandit after another was knocked into the air, sent flying by the true martial halo. The steel cavalry's speed could no longer be measured by their own cultivation realm and strength. Under their high-speed charge, their strength had increased by at least 3 realms. At the very least, before their speed decreased, none of the bandits would be able to block their blades. Like 5 invisible blades plowing into the bandits, screams rang out incessantly. The encirclement that had just closed up was instantly torn apart by the charge of the regular cavalrymen of the imperial court. Let's go! When the 5 cavalrymen of the second echelon had broken through the encirclement, the first and second echelons converged, forming a line of 10 cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty. With a loud boom, they pierced through the bandits' defensive line from the inside out. Like a flood dragon, they charged forward, leaving behind a trail of corpses. Damn it! Don't let those bastards get away. After them. Kill them. That the bandits were so furious that they felt like their lungs were about to explode. So many of them had died, but not only did they not manage to kill a single person, they even allowed them to escape. How could the bandits take this? Whoosh! A dense mass of bandits chased after Wang Chong's group. The bandits with war horses were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. They charged out from the crowd, galloping in pursuit. 10 cavalrymen and 2 children. Not a single one of them had died, but they had killed at least 40 bandits. At the back of the crowd, the Iron Cloak highwayman and the military advisor frowned silently. Even though they intended to use Wang Chong's group to intimidate the bandits, and at the same time, test the strength of Wang Chong's group, the loss of so many bandits in a single encounter still left them with a heavy heart. This group of cavalrymen possesses frightening destructive power. The Iron Cloak highwayman spread open his right palm, and a miniature iron cloak floated in the air, flexing and flexing in his hand. Cavalrymen have to charge on their own to unleash their full potential. This is also the reason why I tried my best to intercept them and keep them in the forest, preventing them from entering the main road. The Iron Cloak highwayman's military advisor stroked his beard as he explained calmly, but after a brief pause, a subtle glint flashed across Joanne's eyes. However, this group of cavalrymen is indeed stronger than the one we intercepted earlier. As the saying goes, soldiers are fearless, generals are fearless. The same soldier would behave differently under different generals. Under the command of a defensive and conservative general, this soldier might appear timid. Under the command of a brave and resolute general, this soldier would become fearless and unstoppable. This was the influence of a general's disposition and the environment. At the very least, the 10 cavalrymen led by Wang Chong gave him a completely different feeling from Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others on the slope. It seems like it's him. A thought flashed across Zhouan's mind. He had already confirmed that it was the group on the main road to the east who had wiped out the bandits and forced them to submit to him. Boss, the 40 bandits aren't a match for them. Send another 60 brothers over. Zhouan suddenly turned to the leader on the boulder and said, in Zhouan's words, the only ones worthy of being called brothers were his own men. 60 bandits, 40 bandits, and the other bandits on foot. Their numbers were already several times that of Wang Chong's group. The fact that they were able to dispatch so many men to deal with him was more than enough to show how much importance Zhouan placed on Wang Chong's group. On the boulder, the leader of the Iron Cloak highwaymen nodded silently. In the next moment, the 60-odd Iron Cloak highwaymen bellowed and whipped their horses. They circled around the sea of bandits and emerged from the forest on the right. Shi Yujian leaped onto the main road and followed closely behind the bandits. The horsemanship and fighting prowess of these bandits were decent, on par with the official army. With so many of them, they were more than enough to crush Wang Chong's group. They're following us. On the main road, a cloud of dust billowed as the war steeds galloped. Bai Xiling had been paying close attention to the movements behind her. Among the bandits and highwaymen, there were quite a few tall and muscular Turks, Gorians and short but ferocious Azan tribesmen. In this wave, Wang Chong had gathered at least 80 to 90 bandits and highwaymen with him. Honestly speaking, this was the first time that Bai Xiling had experienced such a situation. She was so nervous that her palms were drenched in sweat. With so many people around, Bai Xiling wasn't confident that she could deal with them at all. Don't panic. It's just 80 to 90 bandits, and they aren't even part of the official army. They aren't a threat to us yet. Wang Chong said calmly. The army he led had even triumphed over invaders that were several times the number of bandits and highwaymen, let alone a bunch of bandits and highwaymen. In the battlefield by the borders of the Tang dynasty, it was normal for such a numerical comparison to be expected. As a lady, Bai Xiling couldn't help but feel flustered. However, to Wang Chong, he was more than familiar with such a situation. On a battlefield with complicated terrain, for a commander who was truly good at leading troops, numbers sometimes didn't mean anything. Chase, you won't be able to escape. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, I'll catch you all. Ha ha ha, that woman is blaming me. Don't you dare snatch her from me. Kill them all. That strange howl sounded. Seeing how Wang Chong and the others were being chased by them, the bandits' faces contorted as they laughed excitedly. Nay! After chasing for dozens of li, intense and high-spirited neighs of horses suddenly sounded from the two sides of the mountain. While the bandits were caught off guard, a well-disguised warhorse suddenly leaped out from the forest on the right. With lightning speed, it charged into the most vulnerable area between the 40 bandits and the 60 highwaymen. Rumble! Riding on the terrain, the horse charged down the slope. Its speed and momentum were even more terrifying than charging on flat ground. What kind of tiger was the scariest? The tiger that descended the mountain was the scariest. Similarly, what kind of cavalry was the scariest? The cavalry that charged down the slope was the scariest. That kind of momentum was like an avalanche, unstoppable and unstoppable. Rumble. Before the dozens of bandits and highwaymen could react, they were hit by the cavalry that Wang Chong had set up on the slope. Ah! Shrill screams pierced through the air. The long line was instantly pierced through. At least 30 bandits and highwaymen were caught off guard and died under the charge and thrust of the iron spears of the 10 Tang Dynasty cavalry. The originally orderly team was instantly thrown into chaos. Now's the time. Counterattack. Chapter 344. Rumble. The earth quaked. No one could describe the tremors caused by the 30 Tang Dynasty cavalry charging into the bandit ranks in an arrow formation. The neighing of the horses, the screams of pain, the clashing of metal, and the cracking of bones all mixed together. In the moment of battle, more than 20 mounted bandits had their bones crushed, and even more were sent flying into the sky by the fierce impact. The power of the military's warhorses was on full display at this moment. Whether it was the sturdiness of their bones, tenacity, or strength, the warhorses of the military far surpassed the tamed horses these bandits and highwaymen could casually get. Wang Chong's intention of luring the bandits and highwaymen over and forming a long line on the official road was now clear. Although the power of the cavalry was greater in open terrain, this was only a small group of cavalry. However, it was only a small group of cavalrymen, and they were able to display their greatest power in narrow terrain. The official road to the west could only allow 6 warhorses to gallop side by side. No matter how many bandits and highwaymen there were, they could only move 6 warhorses on the official road. In the face of the stronger and more coordinated Tang Empire, the bandits and highwaymen were no match for the bandits and highwaymen. Nay, the 40 bandits and highwaymen were like a line of weeds in a field, waiting to be harvested. Thud, thud, thud. The spears of the 30 Tang Dynasty cavalry were like dragons. Not a single person could stop them. When the front line of the bandits collapsed, the rear line was completely unable to stop them. Almost every bandit was attacked by 6 or 7 Tang Dynasty cavalry at the same time. When the 30 cavalry swept past, they left behind corpses strewn all over the place. For both Wang Chong and his 30 cavalry, this sort of battle was a walk in the park. But for Bai Siling, as well as the bandits and highwaymen, who had never experienced this kind of cruel battle, it was unimaginable. This was especially so for the bandits and highwaymen. The 30 great Tang cavalrymen were like 30 killing machines. Their united momentum was like the eruption of a mountain torrent. Just a single glance at them was enough to send them into an unforgettable nightmare. In just an instant, the 40 bandits who had given chase were corpses strewn all over the official road and the 2 sides of the hill. Blood and severed limbs were scattered all over the ground. The might of a cavalry of this scale could no longer be described by their numbers alone. In the open plains, a 10,000-strong cavalry could take on an army of 300,000 strong infantry alone, and they could even penetrate and defeat the enemy repeatedly. Those who did not understand this would be plunged into a nightmare. Kill. Before the 60 Iron Cloak highwaymen could react, Wang Chong's 30 Tang Dynasty cavalry had already merged with the 10 cavalrymen who had been lying in ambush on the hill. With the addition of the 10 cavalrymen, the already formidable force was even more formidable. Hung Long. Without the slightest hesitation, the 40 cavalrymen charged right into the midst of the 60 Iron Cloak highwaymen after killing the 40 bandits. In just a few breaths' time, the entire process had been completed. Nay, steeds collided with steeds, spears clashed with blades, and the same scene repeated itself once more. The strength of the Iron Cloak highwaymen surpassed that of the bandits, and in fact, they were on par with the regular army of the Tang Dynasty. But in an intense battlefield where 2 armies were clashing with one another, this word meant the difference between the heavens and the earth. Boom! One warhorse after another was thrown into the air by the ferocious collisions. Both the rider and the horse flew several meters into the air, as if they were weightless. But before they could land, spears after spear darted through the air like dragonflies, piercing into the formation behind them. Blood splattered like a fountain under the sunlight. Along with the blood, the bandits of the Iron Cloak highwaymen could be seen splattering as well. The powerful highwaymen who were ferocious and belligerent would never be able to match up to the well-trained Great Tang cavalry. Pung 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 pung. Wave after wave of horse bandits fell as the dense forest of spears pierced forward. At this moment, a simple yet effective battle formation was far more effective than any exquisite martial arts. Let's go. Retreat. 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 We've fallen into an ambush. We aren't a match for them. That an extremely terrified voice resounded on the official road. Even though the 60 Iron Cloak highwaymen were far stronger than the bandits, they only managed to fend off the assault for a moment before collapsing completely. Those who had never experienced it would never be able to imagine the fearsome might of the charge of 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen. The 30 Iron Cloak highwaymen at the front line didn't even manage to hold on for a moment before they were crushed to smithereens by the might of the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen. The momentum they exerted was so overwhelming that they couldn't even muster the slightest bit of will to resist. The difference in strength was too great. This wasn't just a matter of strength. The might of the charge of 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen was far beyond what the highwaymen could withstand. Di-da-da. Seeing the collapse of the cavalrymen before them, the Iron Cloak highwaymen at the very back were the first to turn tail and flee. Charge! Wang Chang's gaze turned cold as he ordered without any hesitation. In the heat of the battlefield, once one side's cavalrymen faltered in fear and turned tail to flee, it would be impossible for them to escape even if they wanted to. Theoretically speaking, everyone was riding on steeds, so their speed should be about the same. But reality would never be the same as theory. Once the charge of the cavalrymen began, their speed would only grow faster and faster until they reached a peak and couldn't stop anymore. On the other hand, the side that turned tail to flee would go from extreme speed to extreme stillness, starting from zero again. This meant that their speed couldn't compare to Wang Chang's group at all. Ah! Amidst the screams of agony, the Great Tang cavalrymen chased after the highwaymen. Their spears glowed with the luster of halos, making them look like pythons and dragons. With a single strike, they pierced through the bodies of the highwaymen and flung them into the air. Poo-pee-pee-oo. Before the highwayman's body could even fall to the ground, dozens of cavalrymen had already pierced through his body one after another, causing him to fall to the side of the road. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. The short 30 zhang path became the highwayman's nightmare. One after another, the highwaymen were chased down and stabbed to the side of the road. Some of the highwaymen tried to retaliate before their deaths, stopping abruptly in an attempt to drag others down with them. But what awaited them were 34 spear tips. Wherever the cavalrymen passed, both men and horses died, leaving behind only corpses. Hurry up and flee to the top of the mountain. Someone finally realized that they would never be a match for Wang Chang's group on the flat road. Squeezing his horse's abdomen, he and his steed became one and leaped up the mountain. Charge! Without thinking, several cavalrymen leaped high into the air and charged into the forest, intending to chase after the highwaymen. There's no need for that. Let them escape. Wang Chong raised an arm and said calmly. In the next moment, the cavalrymen who had already chased the highwaymen into the forest retreated. Strict obedience. This was the most basic rule of the army. Wang Chang's commanding ability had won everyone's trust. From this moment onwards, they had completely regarded him as their leader, not just because of the imperial court's orders. Don't chase a cornered enemy. They're just a few highwaymen, nothing to worry about. Let them go. Wang Chong pulled on the reins and sat on the back of his steed as he said calmly. His expression was indifferent, his eyes wise, and his entire body exuded an aura of extreme calmness. At this moment, even Wang Chong himself did not realize that he no longer resembled a 17-year-old youth. Instead, he resembled a calm and seasoned general. Yes, Lord. The cavalrymen replied respectfully. Their expressions and actions made it seem as though they were meeting a high-ranking general of the army. At the same time, everyone suddenly realized that the battle had ended. Other than the few highwaymen who had escaped, the rest of the bandits and highwaymen had been wiped out. The several hundred zhang long official road was filled with the corpses of bandits and highwaymen. There were Turks, Uzun, Gogurians, Abbasid Caliphate and Karax Spazinu. Their corpses were piled up into a small mountain. Fresh blood flowed from the corpses, dyeing the ground crimson. Severed limbs, dismembered arms, intestines, and fresh blood were everywhere. The air was filled with the pungent stench of blood. Ugh! Bai Xiling hadn't noticed it earlier, but now that the battle was over, she couldn't help but vomit. Even though she was known to be a valiant figure on par with the likes of Marchioness Yi and Wang Zhuyan, she was still a lady. She had never seen such a cruel sight before. Bai Xiling's body convulsed, and the moment she vomited, she found it hard to stop. Furthermore, the pungent stench of blood in the air made it even more unbearable for her. Hua! Dismounting from her steed, Bai Xiling rushed to the side of the official road and vomited violently. All of the food she had eaten over the past few days, along with her yellow bile, came gushing out. She even vomited to the point that tears were flowing down her face. This should be your first time, right? You'll get used to it soon. A voice sounded behind her. Wang Chong had unknowingly dismounted from his steed and walked over. No matter how valiant a lady was, there was still a weak side to her. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen Bai Xiling vomiting. How did you do it? Bai Xiling tried her best to suppress the urge to vomit, but the moment her hands touched the ground, another mouthful of bile gushed out. What? Wang Chong was taken aback. How did you do it? Why aren't you vomiting? Kneeling on the ground, Bai Xiling asked. Wang Chong was taken aback, and a dazed look appeared on his face. It was normal for an ordinary person to vomit the first time they killed someone. Did he really not know how to do it? Of course he knew how to do it. Just that it wasn't now. Chapter 345. In his previous life, he had never even killed a chicken, needless to say a human. But humans change. Life shaped a person, and it also changed a person. In his previous life, when he caught the eye of a few seniors in the military and was promoted, Wang Chong killed for the first time in his life. Looking at the red and white blood flowing out, Wang Chong vomited even more violently than Bai Xiling did. But when his comrades fell one after another, and the familiar land of the 9 continents burned to ashes, Wang Chong never vomited again. After vomiting out all of his weakness, all that was left in Wang Chong's heart was determination. But these were things that Wang Chong wouldn't tell Bai Xiling. Compared to the mission on his shoulders and the predicament he was in, all of his personal pride and disgrace, gains and losses, and even his feelings and fears were insignificant. Xiling, it's not that I won't vomit like you, but there are some things that are more important than these severed limbs that you see. If we can't find a way to defeat those highwaymen and bandits, the ones lying on this road would be us, Su Gan, and Huang Yongtu's corpses. Wang Chong said slowly as he looked at Bai Xiling's back. Bai Xiling was taken aback for a moment before she slowly raised her head to look at the determined face of the young man behind her. For some reason, Bai Xiling suddenly felt an indescribable sense of attraction from the young man behind her. In that instant, even the disgust in her heart subsided. Let's go, time waits for no one. Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others are still waiting for us. Standing behind Bai Xiling, Wang Chong stretched out his hand and said. Bai Xiling subconsciously reached out a hand and grabbed Wang Chong's palm. She felt a sense of security and dependence that she had never felt before. In a trance, Bai Xiling had forgotten that this lofty and indifferent youth in front of her was actually much younger than her. Go! With a flick of the whip, the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen, along with Wang Chong and Bai Xiling, charged toward the Iron Cloak Highwayman leader. This is bad. This is bad. On the right side of the mountain path, 2 stallions suddenly emerged from the forest, and 2 bandits leaped down from the backs of their steeds. Frightened out of their wits, they kneeled before Iron Cloakly. My brother was killed. Speak clearly. How many people were killed? Where are the others? Standing on the boulder, Iron Cloakly said with a livid face. Dead. Other than the 2 of us, all of our brothers were killed. The 2 Iron Cloak highwaymen trembled in fear as they replied. To the east of Longxi, the Iron Cloak highwaymen were known for their ferocity and fearlessness. But in that short instant, they were truly terrified. 40 mounted bandits and 60 Iron Cloak highwaymen, a group of 100 men, were slaughtered in just a few moments. Broken limbs and corpses piled up like a mountain on the road. On the other hand, there wasn't a single casualty on Wang Chong's side. That kind of ferocity was unimaginable to those who hadn't experienced it themselves. What? As soon as their voices fell, 2 bangs rang out, and they were sent flying almost simultaneously. Retracting his palm, Iron Cloak Li's complexion turned awful. Even though he and the military advisor didn't give chase, they had been paying close attention to the movements in the distance. When the deafening battle cries finally disappeared, Iron Cloak Li had already sensed that something was amiss. But in Iron Cloak Li's view, his brothers were experts in horsemanship. Even if they couldn't defeat the bandits, they should still be able to escape. Perhaps, they might even be able to kill a few of the Tang Dynasty's soldiers. That would be even better. But for more than 100 of his subordinates to be slaughtered, with the exception of 2, this was truly out of Iron Cloak Li's expectations. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it seemed like the other party had intentionally let the 2 of them escape. This made Iron Cloak Li's complexion turn awful. Zhouan, how are the preparations on your side? Iron Cloak Li asked grimly, as he turned to the military advisor beside him. I still need a while more. Judging from the alertness of those bandits, I'm afraid that it'll take a little more time. Zhouan replied with an awful complexion as well. Even though the Iron Cloak highwaymen had the advantage in numbers, it was still a considerable loss for them to lose 100 of their subordinates in a single go. The only thing that could make the 2 of them feel better was that those bandits who had just joined them weren't too great of a loss to the Iron Cloak highwaymen. When a new group of bandits appeared, they would be able to replenish their numbers. As for the 60 highwaymen who had died, it was truly a heart-wrenching sight to behold. However, those were the weakest of the Iron Cloak highwaymen, and only a few of them had reached true martial realm. From this point of view, although 100 of their brothers had died, they were all the weakest in the lower ranks, so it wasn't a serious loss. Iron Cloak Li nodded as he clenched his right hand into a fist and spoke with killing intent. Once you're done with your preparations, I'll make a move personally and slaughter those fellows. Up till now, the Iron Cloak highwaymen had never suffered such heavy losses. Including those whom Wang Chong had killed previously, he had already killed more than 100 of them. Iron Cloak Li had to admit that he had underestimated these 40 cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty. In terms of fighting prowess, they were definitely much stronger than those on the slope. However, Wang Chong and the others had also succeeded in infuriating Iron Cloak Li. If Iron Cloak Li was only trying to win over the hearts of his subordinates and intimidate them previously, at this moment, he was bent on killing Wang Chong and the others. Let's wait for a moment first. We'll wipe out all of the Tang soldiers on the slope together with them. Iron Cloak Li spat. In his eyes, the Tang soldiers on the slope were no different from birds in a cage. The only reason why he didn't slaughter them was because he was afraid that Wang Chong and the others would leave once they had nothing to worry about. Di-da-da. Just as he was fuming with rage, the sound of galloping could be heard from afar, accompanied by a cloud of dust. Turning around a corner, Wang Chong led the way with Bai Siling on his right. Leading the 40 cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty, they slowly appeared before everyone's eyes. Boom! When Wang Chong appeared with the 40 cavalrymen, a deafening cheer suddenly sounded from the slope. Zhang Lin, Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the other cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty all stood up in agitation. Regardless of the conflicts they had previously, at this moment, Wang Chong's appearance had filled them with unprecedented hope. Unbelievable. He really did it. They really killed more than 100 bandits and highwaymen. Not a single one of them was missing. That the crowd was excited. When more than 100 people went out, and only 2 returned, the crowd already knew the result. But who could have thought that not a single one of the 40 cavalrymen would die? Unbelievable. How did that lad do it? Looking at Wang Chong and the 40 cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty, Su Gan and Huang Yongtu muttered in astonishment. They were veterans who had fought against the highwaymen and highwaymen. Just like that, More than a dozen veterans of the Tang dynasty were slumbering in this place. But despite dragging more than 100 highwaymen and bandits out, Wang Chong still managed to annihilate all of them while coming out unscathed. This result was simply like a miracle. Su Gan and Huang Yongta knew that it was impossible for them to achieve such a feat. This was the first time that they were deeply impressed by the strength that Wang Chong had displayed. "Lad, report your name. Who in the world are you?" A loud voice came from the back of the densely packed bandits and horse bandits. The crowd stirred and parted like a wave, creating a straight path on its own. Behind this path was a massive boulder, and standing on top of it was the leader of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, Iron Cloak Li. That 8-foot-tall figure, even separated by layers of space, still gave people a strong sense of oppression. As soon as Wang Chong appeared, Iron Cloak Li's gaze immediately fell on Wang Chong. Hundreds of gazes were directed at Wang Chong from all directions. Even Zhang Lin, Su Gan, and the others, who were hiding behind a makeshift shelter, were paying close attention to Wang Chong as well. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly grave and somber. "Dida!" Wang Chong urged his steed forward. Facing the hundreds of gazes, Wang Chong showed no fear at all. "Iron Cloak Highwayman, you sure are gutsy to dare attack the army of the royal court. Do you know the consequences of making an enemy out of the royal court?" Paying no heed to Iron Cloak Li, who was standing on top of the boulder, Wang Chong swept his gaze across the surrounding highwaymen. "What a joke! You have already come knocking on our door. Wherever you went, you left no one alive. Who knows how many bandits died in your hands? Are we not allowed to retaliate? Officials can kill bandits, and naturally bandits can kill officials as well." Iron Cloak Li sneered furiously as an unruly aura emanated from him. The world is bright, and the sun and moon are shining brightly. To think that you bunch of bandits, invading the lands of the Tang dynasty as kings, and sparing the lives of those who have committed crimes. The imperial army suppresses the bandits, pacifies the people. This is a righteous act. It is a reasonable act. Are we supposed to allow you bunch of bandits to wreak havoc in the world? You should know the strength of the royal court. With just 40 of us, we can easily wipe out 100 of you without suffering any injuries. When the true army of the royal court appears, you should know what will happen to you. I advise you to make use of this opportunity to repent and turn over a new leaf. There's still time. Wang Chong's gaze was as sharp as a bolt of lightning. Coupled with the feat he had just accomplished, his gaze exerted immense pressure on everyone. For a moment, the entire area fell silent. Chapter 346. Gongzi sure has a sharp tongue. However, if we were afraid of the laws of the royal court, we wouldn't have become bandits. Since this is our livelihood, it goes without saying that our heads are already hanging by our belts. Do you think that we will fear the imperial army? Besides, we have already killed the imperial army, and this isn't the first time. Do you think that there's a way out? At the back of the formation, the military advisor of the Iron Cloak Highwaymen, Zhouan, suddenly spoke up. That young man was simply too imposing. With just a few words, he had managed to lower the morale of his brothers. Zhouan knew that if he didn't stop the other party now, something unexpected might really happen. Speaking of which, Gongzi sure is impressive. Despite your young age, you have such a deep understanding of the means of us highwaymen. On top of that, when we make a move, not even the fowls and dogs are spared. Yet Gongzi killed more than 100 of them without batting an eyelid. Zhouan is truly impressed. To think that a place like the capital would have a figure like Gongzi, I'm really surprised. It seems like if Gongzi were to rise to the top in the future, we would have to keep our distance from Gongzi. That fellow sure is formidable. With just a glance, Wang Chong could tell that the military advisor of the Iron Cloak Highwayman had managed to raise the morale of the bandits with just a few words. The eyes that were staring at him were filled with hostility and killing intent. You must be the military advisor of the Iron Cloak Highwayman, Zhouan? Wang Chong stared at the middle-aged scholar next to Iron Cloak Li, his eyes sharp and unfazed by his aura. A light breeze blew by, causing Wang Chong's robe to flutter. Even the cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty, who had followed Wang Chong for a long time, had never seen such a powerful aura before. Just how many secrets does that lad have? Bai Xiling looked at Wang Chong's slender back with a peculiar look in her eyes. She had seen many geniuses in Longwei training camp, and she had seen many scions and scions of prestigious clans. However, none of them could match up to the feeling that Wang Chong gave her. General, Bai Xiling racked her brains, and finally found a suitable word. The aura that Wang Chong was exuding now was like that of a general on the battlefield, who was in charge of the country. Before him, be it the thousands of horse bandits and bandits on the other side, or the cavalry of the Tang dynasty on his side, all of them were subconsciously suppressed and followed his lead. Even Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others, who were on bad terms with him, were paying close attention to his every move. Even though his cultivation base was lower than many people's. Oblivious to the thoughts of the crowd behind him, Wang Chong's attention was completely focused on the middle-aged advisor, standing beside the Iron Cloak highwayman. Your Excellency is also a well-read scholar. Why don't you take the imperial examinations and fight for your fame? Don't tell me that the Book of Confucius and Mencius also teaches people to become bandits, to rob houses and occupy land to become kings? Haha, you don't have to worry about that, young master. I am indebted to the Iron Cloak highwayman for saving my life, and I am willing to serve him. On the other hand, Gongzi, you can't be thinking that you will be able to save your companions just like that, right? By the way, the Iron Cloak highwayman is the only one who has the final say here. Don't waste your energy on me. Zhouan stroked his beard with a smile. Ha ha ha, lad, you do have some capability. Seeing that you have killed more than 100 of my men, I will give you a chance. Put down your weapons and surrender. Perhaps, you might even be able to save your companions. Otherwise, both you and them will die. Iron Cloakly laughed heartily, and his voice reverberated through the surroundings like the rumbling of thunder. Leader of the bandits, are you joking with me? Won't we die even faster if we put down our weapons? Wang Chong sneered coldly. There's no other way then. If you don't put down your weapons, they will die even faster. Attack. As soon as those words were spoken, Iron Cloak Li's smile retracted, and with a wave of his hand, he pointed at Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others with a cold and cruel expression on his face. Hong Long, the bandits and highwayman, who were still in a passive state a moment ago, suddenly began to move like a massive machine. 500 to 600 bandits and highwaymen moving out at the same time. Their aura could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. It was extremely astonishing. Nay, with the highwaymen at the front and highwaymen at the back, they charged right at Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others with the aid of bows and arrows. This is bad. On the slope, the faces of Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the others warped in horror. They had just received the pills from Wang Chong and the others, and they hadn't even rested for long when the Iron Cloak highwayman suddenly launched an all-out attack. Get up! Get up! Damn it! Bastard, what are you doing? Put down your weapons. Are you trying to get us killed? Are you insane? If they put down their weapons, we will die even faster. On the slope, Huang Yongtu cursed furiously as he tried to get Wang Chong and the others to put down their weapons. However, what greeted him was Zhang Lin and Su Gan's fury. Huang Yongtu might have been speaking without thinking, but Su Gan and Zhang Lin knew that if Wang Chong and the others were to put down their weapons, there would be no hope left. Everyone was going to die. Hurry up and prepare the defenses. Don't let them get close. If we can't hold them, we can break out at any moment. Zhang Lin hurriedly issued the command. The 26 true martial realm cavalrymen of the Tang dynasty were still able to hold on for some time. What should we do? Bai Xiling subconsciously turned to look at Wang Chong. The Iron Cloak highwayman's sudden assault on Su Gan and Huang Yongtu had thrown the crowd on the main road into chaos. Don't panic. Everyone listen to my command. Charge. Don't hold back, charge. Wang Chong swiftly analyzed the situation before Bai Xiling, and before Bai Xiling's astonished gaze, Wang Chong waved his hands grandly and led the 40 Tang dynasty cavalrymen into the midst of the Iron Cloak highwayman. Kill! Kill! Carrying the momentum of killing 100 bandits and highwayman, the 40 Tang dynasty cavalrymen charged into the midst of the Iron Cloak highwayman like ferocious beasts. The speed of the charge was far faster than the speed of the Iron Cloak highwayman. Before the first wave of bandits could even reach Su Gan and Huang Yongtu, the steeds of Wang Chong, and the others had already charged into the midst of the Iron Cloak highwayman like a sledgehammer. The same sight repeated itself once more. Hong Long. Amidst shrill, panicked, and terrified screams, dozens of mountain bandits and horse bandits were thrown high into the air by the impact of the warhorse's charge, as if they were weightless. Pu-pu-pu-pu. A dense formation of spears pierced through the air, and in the blink of an eye, a large group of bandits and highwaymen fell to the ground. The halos connected with one another, and the forest of spears turned into a tidal wave. Before the charging Tang army, the bandits and highwaymen were no match for them at all. Ah! Get out of the way! Get out of the way! Those fellows are attacking us! Hold them back! Get out of the way! Let me through! Save me! Wang Chong's assault was extremely sudden, and the speed of his steed's charge was even more unexpected. Most of the bandits clearly saw it, but they were unable to react in time. In just an instant, the bandits and highwaymen collapsed like weeds, their severed limbs flying all over the place. Relying on their superior strength, the bandits and highwaymen on the east side of the main road collapsed in an instant, and the collapse swiftly spread to the rear. The crowd fell into chaos. The valiance and ferocity of the bandits and highwaymen were nothing in the face of the ruthlessness of the imperial army, as well as their machine-like efficiency in harvesting. The bandits and highwaymen screamed as they frantically fled. Panic swiftly spread through the crowd, and it seemed like it was going to spread to the entire army. Bastard! Iron Cloakly flew into a rage. Before they could make any progress in their assault, Wang Chong's army was already on the verge of crushing the eastern side. Mobilize the archers and aim at the eastern side. Send 100 brothers over to coordinate with the other bandits and exterminate them. Yes. One of the leaders of the Iron Cloak highwaymen quickly carried out the order. Beside the boulder, the military advisor of the Iron Cloak highwaymen couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew that that lad wouldn't be easy to deal with, but only after seeing him for himself did he realize how difficult it was. Under his command, the 40 Tang dynasty cavalrymen were as ferocious as beasts. The might of their charge even sent some of the bandits and their steeds flying a dozen zhang into the air. This aura was too fearsome. At this rate, if the Iron Cloak highwaymen were to focus on the Tang army on the slope and ignore Wang Chong's group in the east, even if they succeeded, they would suffer heavy losses. We're in trouble. Zhouan smiled bitterly. At this moment, he suddenly realized that the Tang army was much more difficult to deal with than he had imagined. Left flank to the left and right flank to the right. Ignore the Tang army on the slope for now and don't enter the main road. The Tang army is the strongest on the main road. Flank them from both sides of the slope. Zhouan quickly mobilized his troops and issued a series of orders, instructing the bandits and highwaymen to move according to his will. Under Zhouan's command, the 500 to 600 bandits and highwaymen quickly got into formation. They gave up on the main road and circled around the forest on both sides of the slope, forming a formation that encompassed Wang Chong's group. Zhouan's gaze was sharp. In just an instant, he could tell that they weren't a match for Wang Chong's group on the main road. War steeds could charge on flat ground, but on the complicated terrain, their might would be greatly reduced. As long as they could circle around the Iron Cloak highwayman and attack from both sides of the slope, they would be able to suppress them. Retreat! Seeing that the Iron Cloak highwayman was about to surround Wang Chong's group, Wang Chong raised his left fist and spread open his fingers. In the next instant, the 20 cavalrymen under Wang Chong split into two groups and charged forward, crushing the eastern formation of the Iron Cloak highwayman. First, they would cover by Siling's retreat before retreating themselves. Seeing that the encirclement was about to be completed, some of the bandits thought that this was an opportunity and charged forward desperately, hoping to delay Wang Chong's group. However, under the charge of Wang Chong's two groups of cavalrymen, they were crushed to smithereens. Nay! With a loud neigh, The Iron Cloak highwayman charged out from the main road like a serpent before the encirclement of the Iron Cloak highwayman closed in. Chapter 347. In that instant, time seemed to have come to a standstill. The Iron Cloak highwaymen, who were charging toward Wang Chang's group, abruptly came to a halt. Even the most ferocious highwaymen couldn't help but shudder in fear when they saw the orderly formation of the Tang Dynasty cavalrymen. If even the strongest highwaymen reacted in such a manner, how could the other highwaymen possibly react in such a manner? The main road, the mountain slope, and the forest, as far as the eye could see, everything was deathly silent. The pungent stench of blood permeated the air. In this brief clash, Wang Chang's side was once again unscathed, whereas the Iron Cloak highwaymen had lost more than 60 corpses. Seeing was believing. Even though they knew that their 100 brothers had died at the hands of Wang Chang's group, and they knew that the imperial army was stronger than the highwaymen, none of that could compare to the shock and awe brought forth by the brief charge of the 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen under Wang Chang's command. At this moment, every single cavalryman lined up on the main road seemed like a demon that had just walked out of hell, exerting a terrifying pressure that felt almost tangible. Gulp! One of the highwaymen gulped down a mouthful of saliva. His pale face was filled with fear. The immovable Tang Dynasty cavalrymen were even more frightening and intimidating than when they charged forward. Having traversed the West for so many years, he had never imagined that he would fear a group of 40 Tang Dynasty cavalrymen amidst an army of more than 700 highwaymen. Those fellows are too strong. The same thought flashed across the minds of many others, and some of the highwaymen instinctively retreated from the crowd. After witnessing the might of the charge of the cavalrymen, they no longer believed that they could remain safe in the midst of a crowd. This is great. I didn't expect those fellows to be so formidable. That lad, we've truly underestimated him. No commoner can possess such military accomplishments. Even more so, no commoner can command 40 cavalrymen with such might. I've misjudged him. He's definitely a disciple of one of the most powerful military families in the capital. White-hoofed Shadow, Bai Siling is right. Who is this guy? On the slope, Su Gan, Huang Yongtu, and the remaining Tang Dynasty cavalrymen were also shocked speechless. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that the steel cavalry just now was a cavalry unit just like them. That kind of charging power and combat strength was too shocking. With their own strength, they had actually managed to forcefully disperse the Iron Cloak highwaymen's attack and nullify their offense. As a result, the 500 to 600 Iron Cloak highwaymen were forced to shift their focus to defending against Wang Chong, Bai Siling, and the others. This was simply inconceivable. All of this was done under the command of Wang Chong. His calmness, rationality, and decisiveness left an even deeper impression on Su Gan and Huang Yongtu than the charge of 40 cavalrymen. Before this, the two of them had been mocking and making things difficult for Wang Chong, thinking that he was just a lowly commoner from the Kunwa training camp. But at this very moment, how could the two of them dare to harbor such thoughts? No one could command 40 cavalrymen to such an extent, be it Long Wei or Xin Wei. Not a single person could do it. This wasn't a feat that any ordinary person could accomplish. At this moment, the two of them had a strong feeling that Wang Chong was definitely a scion of one of the prestigious clans in the capital, and an extremely powerful one at that. However, the two of them had never heard of such a person before. Who in the world is that fellow? Beneath a scarlet maple tree riddled with arrows, Su Gan muttered to himself. At this moment, he was deeply curious about Wang Chong's identity. Bastard! At this moment, no one was more furious than Iron Cloak Li, the leader of the Iron Cloak highwaymen. Including the highwaymen who had died earlier, Wang Chong's group of 40 had already killed nearly 200 of his highwaymen and highwaymen. This was a heavy blow to him. Even though most of the casualties were highwaymen who had defected to his side, it didn't soothe the rage in Iron Cloak Li's heart. Zhouan? How much longer? Iron Cloak Li gazed into the distance and asked grimly. The rage in his eyes was on the verge of bursting out. A little while more, Zhouan replied grimly. He also felt terrible inside. From a certain perspective, this could be considered as a dereliction of duty on his part. Chief, rest assured, by the time the arrangements are completed, they will have nowhere to run. By then you can do whatever you want to them. But before that, I'll have to trouble you to wait a little longer. I'll listen to you for a little longer. Iron Cloakly flung his sleeves and suppressed his anger. He had always trusted the military advisor by his side. But this time, the losses were truly too great. Even if they were to win this battle, it would still damage his prestige. A light breeze blew past, and the surroundings were completely silent. The main road, the hill, and the bend in the east, all three sides were silent. There wasn't even the slightest sound to be heard. Unknowingly, the focus of the Iron Cloak highwaymen had shifted from Su Gan and Huang Yongtu to Wang Chang's group. Even the true martial realm experts by Iron Cloak Li's side had been dispatched to the left side of the main road. After losing nearly 200 of his subordinates, Iron Cloak Li could no longer tolerate any more losses. And with nearly 80% of the attacks being diverted to Wang Chang's group, the remaining forces were unable to focus on Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's group. Just like that, the three sides fell into a stalemate. Gugu. After an unknown period of time, a sudden change occurred. Before countless eyes, a white silhouette suddenly appeared in the sky, and a white pigeon suddenly descended from the sky. In an instant, the atmosphere turned bizarre. Bung! The bowstring vibrated, and before the pigeon could even land, an iron arrow shot through the air. Blood sprayed everywhere as the arrow pierced through the pigeon's body. Following the direction of the steel arrow, the leader of the Iron Cloak highwaymen was slowly sheathing his bow. It's a carrier pigeon from the royal court. Seeing the golden hoop on the pigeon's right leg, Lieutenant Zhang Lin's expression tensed up. With a flick of his horsewhip, he leaped into the air. Before the pigeon was sent flying by the arrow, he coiled his whip around the pigeon's corpse and pulled it back. The purpose of the Iron Cloak highwaymen was only to prevent the news from being transmitted. Seeing that the carrier pigeon was dead, they didn't make any other moves. Lieutenant Zhang, how is it? Did the carrier pigeon say anything? Su Gan and Huang Yongtu's faces tensed up as they turned their gazes over. Even Wang Chong and Bai Siling turned their gazes over as well. This was the first time they had received a carrier pigeon from the royal court. Without saying a word, Zhang Lin took down a golden lacquered bamboo tube from the pigeon's leg and carefully took out a paper scroll. He unrolled it and began reading through it. I have received a second-tier mission from the royal court. After reading the contents of the letter, not only was there no joy on Zhang Lin's face, there was even a bitter smile on his lips. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu were taken aback. To receive a second-tier mission from the royal court at such a time? Lieutenant Zhang, what kind of mission is it? Su Gan propped himself up and walked over. For some reason, he felt that Zhang Lin's expression was a little bizarre. Take a look for yourself. Zhang San did not say much and handed over the letter in his hand. Su Gan and Huang Yongtu took a look at it, and a bizarre expression appeared on their faces. There wasn't much content on the letter, just a few simple sentences. Second-tier mission. Tez has ordered the 80 members of the 6th echelon to eliminate Iron Cloak Li and his accomplices. What kind of joke is this? Huang Yongtu looked furious. He threw the letter in his hand on the ground, as if he was venting his anger. Giving us a second-tier mission at such a time? Are you tired of waiting for us to die? Furthermore, look at the bandits and highwaymen outside. There are at least 700 to 800 of them. Do you think that we can deal with them with just the few of us? Not to mention, there's still Iron Cloak Li. Even Lieutenant Li isn't a match for him. What kind of darned mission is this? Huang Yongtu, are you insane? Watch your words. Are you trying to hide from the royal court? Su Gan warned grimly. Damn it, I'm already on the verge of death. Why would I care about such trifles? Huang Yongtu spat with a twisted expression. No one knew how long they could hold on. Sitting in the small fortification on the hillside, it seemed that they were temporarily safe, but no one knew when they would be smashed into pieces and turned into dust. The feeling of dying at any moment was even more frightening than true death. Lord, calm down. Zhang Lin smiled bitterly. The royal court doesn't know our current situation. They are only concerned with issuing orders, so they have no idea where we are, or that we are currently being surrounded by the Iron Cloak highwaymen. Besides, the capital is too far away from here. Even the royal court wouldn't know that the Iron Cloak highwaymen have gathered 600 to 700 bandits. Peng! Huang Yongta punched a tree beside him, sending with splinters flying. Even his fingers were bleeding from the impact. Even though Huang Yongta knew that Zhang Lin was speaking the truth, it didn't make him feel any better. So far, the best news for us is that there are 2 other lords who aren't surrounded yet. On top of that, the other lord seems to be extremely proficient in the art of war, and his grasp of timing is exceptional as well. This is our only hope. As Zhang Lin spoke, he turned to look at Wang Chong and the others. It had been some time since he had received the 80 cavalrymen, but to be honest, the men and steeds hadn't changed at all. The only difference was that the commander had changed, but the disposition and authority of the 40 cavalrymen were vastly different from when he was leading them. Even their fighting prowess was on a completely different level. This was the change brought about by a wise commander. The duty of a warrior was to guard the borders, so Zhang Lin didn't care too much about his own life. At this moment, he was more concerned about the young man before him. With this kind of military training, he would definitely become a great general who could rule over an entire region in the future if he were to be further tempered on the battlefield of the empire. Such a person was of utmost importance to them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.